Chapter 431. Third senior brother Xiao Xinghe's saber cultivation experience was of great help to Lu Yi. After all, his third senior brother was only in the true lake stage. Ever since Lu Yi obtained the saber cultivation experience, he had been thinking that it would be great if he had more saber cultivation experience. However, in the entire 9 prefectures, the Haotian alliance didn't have a sect that was famous for saber cultivation. There was one sword cultivation sect, the North Profound Sword sect in the War province. Therefore, all the sword cultivators in the 9 prefectures liked to go to the North Profound Sword sect to cultivate and improve their sword cultivation. Since Lu Yi was a saber cultivator, there was no point in going to the North Profound Sword sect. However, he couldn't go to the Wild Saber sect. The Wild Saber sect belonged to the Wanmo Ridge. If he dared to go there, he wouldn't even be able to see the moon tonight, let alone the sun tomorrow. Even if he couldn't go to the Wild Saber sect's main sect, he could at least go to the Wild Saber sect's encampment in the Spirit Stream battlefield. He didn't expect the experts of the Wild Saber sect to personally teach him anything. He could just give 20 sets of saber cultivation experience like his third senior brothers. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to the Wild Saber sect. There were hundreds of sects in the Wanmo Ridge. After he said that, the cultivators of the Wild Saber sect finally understood Lu Ye's intention. Saying that the value of the items in the storage bag was less than 300,000 merit points was all bullshit. The real reason he came here was to ask for saber cultivation experience. Inside the light curtain of the Grand Array, seeing that their guardian had been injured by Lu Yi with a single blow, some people couldn't hold back and rushed towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi lowered his eyes and pointed his saber at the ground. Spiritual energy surged and the saber was surrounded by flames. "Stop!" the man shouted angrily. Seeing that his cultivator stopped, he let out a sigh of relief. He couldn't let his cultivator fight with Lu Yi. If the battle started, many of them would die. The Xianqing Palace was a good example. The first encampment that Lu Yi attacked in the core circle was the Xianqing Palace. In that battle, the Xianqing Palace lost 70 to 80% of its cultivators. It took a long time for them to recover. Although the Wild Blade sect's grade was higher than the Profound Azure Palace's, the overall strength of the Spirit Stream Realm cultivators wasn't much stronger than the Profound Azure Palace's. If Lu Yi could kill 70% of the cultivators from the Dark Azure Palace, he could also kill 70% of the cultivators from the Wild Saber sect. If that happened, they wouldn't even be able to protect their own base. After taking a deep breath, the man said, "Lu Yi, don't go too far. If you can't make the decision, then go find someone who can. I still have something important to do, so I'll wait for an hour. If you don't give me a satisfactory answer after an hour, I'll destroy your Mad Blade sect." The man stared deeply at Lu Yi for a long time before he turned around and said a few words to the people around him before leaving in a hurry. He really couldn't make the decision on such a big matter. He had to return to the 9 regions and ask for instructions from the powerhouses in the sect. Lu Yi sheathed the Pan Shan saber in his hand and placed the scabbard in front of him. He put his hands on the hilt and closed his eyes to rest, waiting. A group of cultivators from the Wild Saber sect confronted him from several hundred feet away, but because of the order of the guardian before he left, no one dared to act rashly. They could only glare at Lu Yi with hatred, venting their grievances and anger with their eyes. There were also some people who looked at Lu Yi curiously. After all, they had heard of Lu Yi's name many times, but this was the first time they saw him in person. Time passed by slowly. Suddenly, a valiant female cultivator walked out of the crowd with a cup of tea in her hands and offered it to Lu Yi. "Honored guest, please have some tea." Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at her condescendingly. The corner of the female cultivator's mouth raised into a mocking smile. "You don't dare." They couldn't beat Lu Yi, but if they didn't fight back after being bullied in front of their door, they wouldn't be fearless swordsmen. Before the guardian left, he told them not to get into a conflict with Lu Yi. Just offering tea naturally didn't count as a conflict, and this was also the way to treat a guest. But no matter who stood in Lu Ye's position, they wouldn't dare to drink this cup of tea casually. Who knew if it was poisoned or not? The female cultivator just wanted to use this method to silently fight back and dispel Lu Ye's arrogance. If Lu Yi didn't dare to take the tea, then the name of Lu Ye the coward would definitely spread in the future. Anyway, this guy had a lot of nicknames, so one more wouldn't matter. Just as the female cultivator was thinking this, Lu Yi raised his hand and took the cup of tea, tilting his head back and drinking it. Who cares if it's poisonous or not, it can't kill him. The corner of the female cultivator's eyes twitched. There was no poison in the tea, but she really didn't expect Lu Ye to be so bold. She secretly regretted it. If she had known, she would have put some poison in the tea. Maybe she would have poisoned this guy to death, and that would have been a great merit. Now it seemed like she really came to serve tea to Lu Yi. In less than half an hour, the man who had left earlier returned. Parting the crowd, he stood in front of the cultivators. Before he could speak, Lu Yi spoke first. We don't accept any bargaining. Your wild saber sect has been passed down for so many years, and there are countless experts who use sabers. 20 sets of saber technique cultivation notes are nothing to you. The man couldn't say the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Before they came, the elders of the sect had given clear instructions to bargain with Lu Ye as much as possible to see if they could give less of their saber cultivation experience. Although these things were not unique, giving them to Lu Ye would be like giving support to the enemy. Naturally, they would give as little as they could and not give as much as they could. This was different from the property they gave before, but Lu Yi had obviously expected this, so he directly blocked them, leaving the wild saber sect with no chance at all. Taking a deep look at Lu Yi, the man raised his hand and threw out a storage bag, which Lu Yi caught. There was no restriction lock on the storage bag, so he reached in and took out handwritten letters from it. He randomly chose one and opened it. The ink on it was not completely dry, so it should have just been copied. Glancing at the content, he confirmed that it was indeed saber technique cultivation notes. He checked several books in a row, but there was no big problem. Only then did Lu Yi carefully put away the saber technique cultivation notes. Looking up at the man, he stretched out his hand and said, "The thing." The man's face darkened. "What thing? What else?" Lu Yi said matter-of-factly, "The thing I gave you at the beginning." The man looked at Lu Yi in shock. "You still want to go back?" "Nonsense." Lu Yi was expressionless. "That's the money your wild saber sect used to buy peace. Of course, if you don't want this peace, I don't care." The man was so angry that his liver hurt. He took the storage bag from his waist and threw it directly to Lu Yi. Lu Yi put it away and said, "Do you want me to leave by myself, or do you want to let me go?" "Open the array." The man shouted. Even if they didn't let him go, he could still leave, so why bother? Although he was angry in his heart, the most important thing now was to send this god of plague away as soon as possible. A gap opened in the array, and Lu Yi rushed into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Looking in the direction Lu Yi left, the cultivators of the wild saber sect all clenched their fists, endless humiliation and anger surging in their hearts. Flying into the air, Lu Yi checked the 10-point map and flew in the direction of Myriad Poison Forest according to the map's guidance. The matters of the core circle were almost settled. Of the sects of Myriad Demon Ridge, except for the 23 sects that he had broken through before, all of them had paid the peace fee, so Lu Yi couldn't cause any more trouble. He was ready to return to the Blue Blood sect. He was still the guardian of the Blue Blood sect, so he had to transfer the guardian position to the right person before he was promoted to Cloud River Realm. Moreover, he had broken through the 23 sects' encampments and plundered a lot of blessings, so he had to return to the sect to deal with it. In addition, he had too many storage pouches on him, which were worth 50 to 60 million merit points. He had to send them back to the sect and give them to Shui Yuan. With so many things on him, Lu Yi didn't feel at ease. There were still 10 days until the baptism of the Heaven's secret reward. According to his previous experience and Lu Ye's estimation, after this time, the spirit mist in the heaven's secret pool shouldn't be of much help to him. His cultivation had reached the end of the spirit stream realm, and he had obtained all the benefits he wanted. Besides one more thing, there was no need to stay in the spirit stream battlefield. The reason he was going to Myriad Poison Forest was naturally to leave some cultivation resources for Huaxiai. After confirming the direction, he was flying when the battlefield imprint suddenly sent him a message. Lu Yi checked and found that it was from his second senior sister Shui Yuan. Before you advance to Cloud River Realm, return to the sect. Got it. Lu Yi didn't know why his second senior sister had told him this, but he had planned to return to the encampment anyway. 2 days later, Lu Yi entered Myriad Poison Forest and appeared in front of the wooden house. He didn't see Huaxiai, so she should be cultivating somewhere. Lu Yi didn't look for her. He went to the 3rd floor, lay down on the bed, and fell into a deep sleep. Looking at the entire spirit stream battlefield, this was the only place where he could completely relax. Even in the encampment, it wasn't as reassuring as this place. It was a pity that he couldn't stay here forever. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, he was awakened by a fragrance and laughter. When Lu Yi opened his eyes, he discovered that the sky was already bright. Yi and Huaxi's voices could be heard from outside the window. Lu Yi got up and walked to the window. He looked down and saw smoke curling up from the kitchen. The two women were chatting and laughing as they busied themselves. He rested his arms on the windowsill and quietly looked down, his heart filled with warmth. If it weren't for Huaxiai putting some lively and strange little things into a jar to make soup, this warmth would have lasted for a long time. Lu Yi, you're awake. Yi looked up and met Lu Ye's eyes. She raised her hand and greeted him. Lu Yi casually responded. He retracted his head and said, call me when you can eat. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, he took out a book on saber cultivation from his storage bag and carefully studied it. The Wild Saber sect was a first-grade sect with the highest concentration of saber users. Since ancient times, there were countless experts who used sabers in the sect. The saber cultivation knowledge passed down was also difficult to calculate. Chapter 432. Lu Yi asked the Wild Saber sect for 20 saber cultivation notes, but to the Wild Saber sect, this was not a problem at all. Moreover, he was sure that the saber cultivation notes given by the Wild Saber sect were more basic and did not involve any advanced cultivation techniques. Lu Yi did not expect them to give him anything profound in the first place. Looking at the contents of the notes, he was gradually inspired. That was until Yi came up with a basin, wet a towel, and carefully rubbed it on Lu Ye's face. After a while, in the small courtyard outside the wooden house, Lu Yi and Huaxiai sat opposite each other and ate. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi said, I'm going back to the encampment. I should be breaking through to the Cloud River realm soon. What are your plans? Nothing for now, Huaxiai replied casually as she cleaned up. Are you going to stay here forever? Lu Yi was puzzled. Don't worry about me. I have my own plans. Anyway, if you work hard on your cultivation, maybe even if I'm at the Spirit Stream battlefield, I'll improve faster than you. Huaxiai winked at him as she spoke. Lu Yi snorted. Then I'll have to work hard. He stood up, took out his spirit boat, and stepped on it. I've left some cultivation resources for you in the room on the 3rd floor. I'll wait for you at the Cloud River battlefield. Go. Lu Yi nodded and soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light and disappearing. Watching Lu Yi leave, Huaxiai smiled and continued to clean up the messy table. There was not much bitterness in her heart. A short parting was just for a better reunion. When Lu Yi first set off from the encampment to the core circle, he had to ride with giant armor all the way. It took him a total of 10 days to reach the Pill Heart sect's encampment. But now that his cultivation had increased greatly, his speed and endurance were much better than before. This time, it took him less than 3 days to return to the Jade Blood sect's encampment. Because of his identity as a guardian, he could quietly enter the defensive formation. But as soon as he entered, he was noticed by the cultivator in charge of monitoring the encampment. He went up to check and saw Lu Yi, exclaiming in joy, "Fifth senior brother is back." The news spread quickly, and people kept gathering here. Lu Yi looked up and saw that there were many cultivators in his encampment. Most of them were unfamiliar faces, and only a small number of them were familiar. Among those unfamiliar faces, there were some who looked very young, only 12 or 13 years old. Lu Yi guessed that these very young people should be the disciples that the sect had recently recruited. As for the older ones, perhaps some of them were from the sect, but most of them were likely disciples from other sects who had come to Blue Blood sect to cultivate. Looking at the outer ring of the battlefield, there were countless sects, but in terms of the density of world energy, the Blue Blood sect station was second to none. This was because the last time Lu Yi had come back, he had bought as much world energy as possible. Compared to the outside world, the concentration of spirit chi here was 11 times higher. This was something that no sect in the outer circle could compare with. If they wanted to break this limit, the Blue Blood sect would have to raise its grade to the 6th stage and move its base to the inner circle of the battlefield. Furthermore, the Jade Blood sect was currently in the limelight. The nearby Myriad Devil Mountain sect was suppressed to the point that they could not even raise their heads. Coming here to cultivate would not only ensure the efficiency of their cultivation, but also ensure their safety. Therefore, the sects that were on good terms with the Jade Blood sect were more than happy to send their disciples here. The only drawback was that the speed of gaining merit points was a little slow. In the base, there were many pairs of eyes that were filled with curiosity, admiration, reverence, and all sorts of other emotions. Lu Yi was stunned to find that the cultivators he was familiar with in the past were basically nowhere to be seen. For example, Kong Niu, Wan Lingyu, He Xiyin, Gu Yang, and the others had all entered the inner circle. The spirit stream battlefield had always been like this. The new generation replaced the old, and the cultivators were always rushing about the huge battlefield, fighting for their own cultivation and future. The ones who could survive the waves and waves would be the final winners. Lu Yi didn't even know who the deputy guardian of the Blue Blood sect was. After entering the Tianji Hall, he exchanged the blessings obtained from the Myriad Devil Mountain sect stations for merit points. At a rate visible to the naked eye, the number representing the sect's merit points rapidly increased. It had to be known that the 20 to 30 sect stations in the inner circle had been destroyed, and all of their blessings had been taken away by Lu Yi alone. Even if they had lost a lot during the plundering, the number of blessings obtained in the end was still extremely terrifying. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the sect's merit points were fixed at a number that started with 3 words and was counted in units of 10 million. Looking at the entire spirit stream battlefield, the Blue Blood sect was probably the only sect with such a huge amount of merit points. With so many merit points, the range of the Blue Blood sect station could be expanded by more than 10 times. However, Lu Yi didn't plan to use these merit points for the time being. The grade of the sect would definitely increase, and it was only a matter of time. Once the grade of the sect increased to the level where it could be moved to the inner circle, it would inevitably cost a lot of merit points. Currently, the Blue Blood sect station didn't have anything to spend merit points on, so there was no harm in saving up more. He only gave himself a monthly salary, which brought his merit points to a round number of 100,000. He used the Tianji pillar to return to the sect. Shui Yuan, who had already received the news, was waiting in front of the Tianji Hall. When she sensed the commotion, she looked up and saw Lu Yi walking out with a ring of storage bags hanging from his waist. She couldn't help but laugh. She had long heard that this little junior brother of hers had asked the remaining hundreds of Myriad Devil Mountain sect stations for a lot of benefits after conquering more than 20 stations. Now, it seemed that the benefits were quite a lot. Second senior sister. Lu Yi stepped forward. Shui Yuan nodded and looked him up and down. You've become darker and stronger. Exposed to the elements, there's nothing I can do about it. As he spoke, he took off the storage bags hanging from his waist and handed them all to Shui Yuan. He immediately felt relaxed. So much. Shui Yuan only knew that Lu Yi had made a fortune this time, but she didn't know how much. After all, the myriad Devil Mountain sect hadn't spread the news in detail. Now that she checked, she was shocked to discover that the myriad Devil Mountain sect had lost a lot of blood this time. Leave it for the sect to develop. You can deal with it as you see fit. Lu Yi said, I'll go pay a visit to the sect master. The old man isn't here. Shui Yuan said. Then I'll go pay a visit to Madame Yun. Every time he returned from outside, these two elders had to pay their respects immediately. This was etiquette. Wait a moment. Shui Yuan shouted, then took out a wooden box from her storage bag and handed it to Lu Yi. Lu Yi took it and opened it to see that there were 2 jade bottles inside. The bottles were filled with some amber-colored spirit pills, each of them about the size of a soybean. I refined it with the honey you got giant armor to bring back. It has the effect of nourishing one's skin. Madame Yun should like it if I give it to her. Women would always care about their appearance, especially older women. They were afraid that one day they would lose their beauty. Therefore, in the cultivation world, things that had the effect of nourishing one's skin were generally sought after by female cultivators. Lu Yi was surprised. Then honey has such an effect? He really didn't know. Previously, Giant Armor was forced to advance to the Cloud River realm in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons. Before returning to the sect, Lu Yi brought back a large amount of honey for Shui Yuan to study and see if it could be used to refine pills that could restore spiritual energy. But now, it seemed that there weren't any pills that could restore spiritual energy, but pills that could nourish one's skin were refined. Yes, I've tried. Shui Yuan said with a smile. And bringing this thing is better than bringing fish every time. Second senior sister is thoughtful. With that said, Lu Yi simply gave all the honey he had stored to Shui Yuan. Since honey had the effect of nourishing one's skin, it would be a waste to leave it in his hands. As for the royal jelly, there wasn't much left. Lu Yi also gave it to Shui Yuan. As for how to deal with it, it was up to second senior sister. He took out his spirit weapon and went straight to Bright Heart Peak to meet Madame Yun. He presented the gifts he brought. As expected, Madame Yun was beaming with joy and was in a good mood. She praised Lu Yi for being filial and sensible. However, there were still necessary tests. During this period of time outside, Lu Ye's attainments in the Tao of Spirit tattoos had improved, so it wasn't difficult for him to deal with Madame Yun's tests. Lu Yi benefited a lot from her guidance. He returned the books he had borrowed before and borrowed a new batch of books. Lu Yi realized that he had already read almost half of the books on the Tao of Spirit tattoos that Madame Yun had collected. In the evening, Lu Yi bade farewell to Madame Yun. After you advance to the Cloud River realm, come and find me. Yes. Go. As usual, it was the servant girl who didn't speak and only knew how to smile that sent Lu Yi out. Every time Lu Yi saw this servant girl, he had a strange feeling. He always felt that this servant girl wasn't as real as what he saw. When he returned to Jade Tripod Peak, second senior sister had already prepared a table of medicinal dishes. Lu Yi swung his arms and ate heartily. Oh right, second senior sister, why do you want me to return to the sect before I advance to the Cloud River realm? Lu Yi asked as he ate. Nothing much. I just want you to advance in the sect's encampment so that the disciples can observe properly. Also, the old man said that your advancement this time might be a little unusual. Unusual? And, it's not convenient to tell you now because the old man isn't sure. When you advance, you'll know whether it's true or not. Shui Yuan said as she picked up food for Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded and said, then second senior sister, tell me about the Cloud River battlefield. After he advanced to the Cloud River realm, he would enter the Cloud River battlefield. Naturally, he had to understand some information about the Cloud River battlefield in advance. Cloud River battlefield. Shui Yuan's eyes revealed a look of reminiscence. She pursed her lips and smiled. That place is completely different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. Moreover, the Cloud River battlefield is much more interesting than the Spirit Stream battlefield. However, it's also much more dangerous. Shui Yuan had obviously also experienced the Cloud River battlefield. She immediately explained some of the rules of the Cloud River battlefield to Lu Yi. Lu Yi listened carefully and memorized it. At the end, Shui Yuan reminded him, remember one thing. In the Cloud River battlefield, the myriad Devil Ridge is not an eternal enemy. Sometimes, you even need to cooperate to achieve your goals. Understood. Chapter 433. The next day, in the outer ring of the Spirit Stream battlefield, Jade Blood Sect Station. Lu Yi sat and waited in the meeting hall. After a while, two people stepped in and saluted Lu Yi together, fifth senior brother. Lu Yi put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the two. They were both familiar faces and could be said to be the first batch of disciples to join Jade Blood Sect. However, because they were rogue cultivators and didn't have high aptitude, even after such a long time, their cultivation hadn't improved much. Now, one of them was a 7th order and the other a 6th order. Even so, it was much better than their ambitions as rogue cultivators. When they joined Jade Blood Sect, they were only 3rd or 4th order cultivators. They thought that they would at most reach the 7th or 8th order in their lifetime, but now it seemed that they could still look forward to the future. The cultivation environment of the Blue Blood Sect's encampment was excellent, and there was an abundance of cultivation resources. Therefore, even the loose cultivators had grown beyond their potential. Lu Yi looked at the 7th order cultivator, Duan Yi. Yes. Transfer your authority as the vice envoy to Qingmu. Qingmu was the 6th order cultivator. Yes. Duan Yi responded and respectfully asked Tian Ji to transfer his authority as the vice envoy and his vice envoy seal to Qingmu. After he was done, Lu Yi handed over the authority and seal of the vice envoy to Duan Yi. In this way, the 7th order cultivator Duan Yi became the vice envoy. And the 6th order cultivator Qingmu became the vice envoy. Choosing Qingmu as the vice envoy was not Lu Ye's idea. It was a comprehensive consideration after consulting his second senior sister last night. At present, the new generation of disciples of Jade Blood Sect was still growing and couldn't support the sect for the time being, so the vice envoy and the vice envoy could only be chosen from the earliest batch of disciples to join. Duan Yi and Qingmu's aptitude was indeed not very good, but they were steady. They handled things well. In the current Jade Blood Sect station, their strength was still acceptable. The reason why he didn't choose other 7th order cultivators as the vice envoy was mainly because the 7th order was not far from the 8th order. Once they reached the 8th order, they would have to leave the station. Choosing a 6th order cultivator would allow them to stay in the station for a longer time. When Qingmu broke through to the 7th order, Duan Yi would be about to leave, and Qingmu would take over. When Gu Yang took over the position of deputy guardian, I told him to take care of the encampment. They also needed to find candidates for the next guardian and deputy guardian. I will say the same thing to all of you. In the future, I'll need the two of you to take care of the outpost. We will definitely not disappoint the sect and 5th senior brother. The two of them declared together. Lu Yi nodded lightly, go. Cultivate well. There was no need to care about aptitude or talent. Your future is not limited to the outer ring of the battlefield. After the two of them left, Lu Yi walked out of the meeting hall. He flew up on his weapon. They arrived at a nearby spiritual peak. Little Gray flapped its wings and walked over. Lu Yi took out a blood-red trout from his storage bag and fed it. Xiao Hui ate them one by one as if they were bugs. Lu Yi stroked its feathers. When eldest brother left the Spirit Stream battlefield all those years ago, he asked you to take good care of the sect's base. Now that we've passed the most difficult time, the days ahead will only get better. If you want to leave, you can leave at any time. You don't have to guard this place anymore. Of course, you can come back whenever you want. If you're willing to stay, that's even better. Little Gray was an overlord-level monster beast and undoubtedly understood human nature, so Lu Yi knew that it could understand his words. The Blue Blood sect had declined for 30 years, and Little Gray had guarded the outpost for 30 years. Even if there were no disciples in the outpost, it still adhered to eldest brother's instructions and never left. The little eagle from back then had gradually grown into an overlord-level existence. However, it was still a flying eagle. It also yearned for freedom and the sky, so Lu Yi felt that, you can give it more freedom and choice. As for how Little Gray would choose, that was its own business. A moment later, Lu Yi soared into the sky on his weapon. He quickly disappeared. After a while, the loud cry of an eagle sounded. In the outpost, many disciples of the Blue Blood sect looked over and saw Little Gray's figure flapping its wings and flying away. It flew all the way east at an extremely fast speed. 5 days later, Lu Yi landed at the top of a flat mountain. This peak was extremely strange. It was as if some peerless expert had cut off the spiritual peak with a single slash. The peak was flat and smooth like a mirror. There were still some dark bloodstains left on the peak, indicating that a great battle had once broken out here. Golden Light Peak. Back then, he had fought 43 battles here with his 5th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivation, killing many 6th Order Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators and finally winning himself a chance to live. This was where Lu Yi became famous. It was also where his legend began. In a flash, it had been almost 2 years. Time had passed so quickly. In 2 years, he had gone from the 5th Order Spirit Stream Realm to the 9th Heaven Realm. This cultivation speed was already very fast. Only those cultivators from top sects with excellent talent could hope to compete with Lu Yi. Rumor had it that the Golden Light Peak contained an opportunity because the terrain here was created by a saber master. There were remnants of that master's saber techniques here. However, Lu Yi did not feel anything special here. He continued on his journey, all the way forward. A day later, he passed by a spiritual peak. Below it was a valley. Back then, he rode on Hupa and shouted, Lu Yi is here. In that valley, Lan Yu Dai and Big Dipper sects cultivators blocked the Myriad Demons Ridge's pursuers for him, fighting a bloody battle. He continued to move forward, walking the path he had taken 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he was so weak. He rode on Hupa and set off from Blue Cloud Mountain with EE. He held a 10-point map in his hand and set off towards Blue Blood sect's encampment. Along the way, he had experienced many hardships. But 2 years later, he could cross the road in one day that he could not complete in 1 or 2 months back then. Now, he had also grown into an overlord. His emotions were fluctuating. The sky in the outer circle was very calm, unlike the inner circle. When flying on artifacts, he would occasionally encounter some cultivators flying on artifacts. The cultivators in the outer circle did not have high cultivation and did not even have the capital to fly on artifacts, so how could he encounter anyone? After setting off from Blue Blood sect's encampment, Lu Yi arrived at the encampment of a Grand Heaven Alliance sect after 10 days. The 10-point map showed that this was Blue Feather Mountain. There were 2 powerhouses from the Myriad Demons Ridge nearby. One was the Supreme Luo sect, and the other was the Qin clan. At the intersection of the 3 powerhouses, there was a 100-peak mountain with a total of 100 peaks. In the past 2 years, Lu Yi had killed many people from the Supreme Luo sect and the Qin clan here. Landing outside the encampment of the Blue Feather Mountain, Lu Yi sized up the defensive formation before him. The reaction of the sects in the outer circle was much worse than the inner circle. When Lu Yi had attacked those sects in the inner circle, each time he appeared, he would be detected immediately and cause chaos. However, when he arrived at the encampment of the Blue Feather Mountain, no one here had detected him. It wasn't until a long time later that a cultivator passing by saw Lu Yi standing outside the Grand Array and immediately became vigilant. Just when Lu Yi was about to introduce himself, Suddenly, he frowned as if a heavenly secret had descended. The baptism bestowed by the heavenly secret had arrived. This was the fourth baptism he had experienced after reaching the first place of the spirit stream ranking. According to his previous experience and estimation, after this baptism, the baptism bestowed by the heavenly secret would not be of much use to him. He did not resist and allowed the heavenly secret to guide him. His vision changed, and he soon appeared in the heavenly secret pond. Just as Lu Yi had expected, although the spiritual mist in the heavenly secret pond was still dense, it did not increase Lu Ye's strength by much. Not only him, but Yi and Hupo were the same. He had reached his limit. In other words, even if Lu Yi continued to stay in the spirit stream stage, he would not gain any benefits. He had already accumulated what he needed to, and it was time to advance to the Cloud River stage. At the same time, inside the encampment of the Blue Feather Mountain, the cultivator who had seen Lu Yi called a group of people over. Among them was the guardian of the Blue Feather Mountain, Su Zining. Where is he? Su Zining's gaze swept over, but he did not see anyone. He was here just now. I don't know why he suddenly disappeared. The cultivator who had seen Lu Yi pointed to a place and explained. Suddenly disappeared. Su Zining frowned. Could it be a ghost cultivator? Only ghost cultivators had the ability to suddenly disappear. Did you see his cultivation? Su Zining asked again. I didn't see him. He disappeared too quickly. Su Zining's expression became serious. Pass down the order. Have the disciples in the sect remain vigilant. If there are any suspicious people or things, report it immediately. Su Zining was unsure of that person's identity and intentions, so he naturally prepared for the worst. Everyone acknowledged, and the hundreds of cultivators in the Blue Feather Mountain immediately entered a state of battle readiness. Lu Yi did not expect that his appearance would cause the Blue Feather Mountain to be so vigilant. The timing was too coincidental. He had just arrived at the Blue Feather Mountain encampment when the heavenly secret reward arrived. An hour later, Lu Yi appeared outside the Blue Feather Mountain encampment again, at the place where he had disappeared. He immediately felt someone looking at him. He looked up and saw a few cultivators looking at him warily. One of them shouted, "Who are you?" Lu Yi looked at them. Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi has come to visit. The Blue Feather Mountain was a sect of the Grand Heaven Alliance. He naturally would not casually barge into their encampment. Moreover, he was indebted to the Blue Feather Mountain. Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi. One of the cultivators frowned. For some reason, he felt that the name was familiar, but he could not remember where he had heard it before. Lu Yi had been wandering in the core circle recently. Previously, he was in the inner circle, so recently, there were not many rumors about him in the outer circle. This caused the cultivators in the outer circle to be stunned when they heard his name. However, that person soon remembered. He pointed at Lu Yi and said with a trembling finger, You're the spirit stream top disciple, Lu Yi. Everyone knew about Lu Yi. How could they know about Lu Yi? Yes. Several cultivators immediately became excited. Someone hurriedly ran inside and prepared to report. How could the cultivators in the outer circle have the chance to see the spirit stream top disciple? Moreover, to many cultivators in the Grand Heaven Alliance, Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi was already an invincible symbol. Also, the sect-destroying Yi and the Spirit Stream top 3 disasters were not titles that ordinary people could achieve. Chapter 434. A moment later, Lu Yi and Su Zining took their seats in the main hall of Green Feather Mountain's encampment. It could be seen that even a guardian like Su Zining was quite reserved in front of Lu Yi, not to mention the others. Green Feather Mountain was now an 8th grade sect, and the strongest in the entire sect was only at the True Lake realm. Although there were a few Spirit Stream realm cultivators in the core circle, they were limited by their aptitude and talent. At most, they could cultivate to the 8th order heaven grade. It could be said that Green Feather Mountain had never had a ninth-order heaven-grade cultivator at the Spirit Stream realm. Lu Yi, the Spirit Stream sect's top disciple, suddenly coming over naturally made Su Zining feel a mountain of pressure. He still didn't know the purpose of Lu Ye's sudden visit. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Lu Yi asked casually, "How is senior brother Tang Wu recently?" When his identity was exposed and he was chased by cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge, Tang Wu had appeared to resolve the crisis for him. If Tang Wu hadn't appeared in time to stop Han Zhiyu, he would have been in big trouble. Senior brother Tang Wu has already reached the Cloud River realm. "Thank you for your concern, senior brother Yi," Su Zining replied. Lu Yi wasn't surprised to hear that Tang Wu had reached the Cloud River realm. Tang Wu was already at the ninth order 2 years ago, and 2 years later, it was time for him to break through. However, Lu Yi estimated that Tang Wu had broken through at the 7th or 8th order heaven grade. He then asked about Xie Jin, Xiao Qiao, Song Xia, Tao Tian Gang, and Mu Ling who had healed him back then. Su Zining replied, "Senior brother Xie, senior sister Qiao, and senior sister Mu have all entered the inner circle. Senior brother Song and senior brother Tao have already died." Lu Yi was silent. It had only been 2 years, but things had changed. The growth of cultivators couldn't avoid killing and all kinds of dangers. Su Zining was very curious, how does senior brother Yi know so many of our senior brothers and senior sisters? Lu Yi smiled, "Didn't they tell you that I participated in the 100 Peak Mountain War 2 years ago? I fought side by side with your senior brothers and senior sisters at that time." Su Zining couldn't help but exclaim. He didn't know about this matter and had never heard anyone mention it before. Lu Ye's words today. Suddenly, he felt that the top ranker of the Spirit Stream sect had become much more amiable. "Do you need me to call senior brother Xia and senior sister Qiao back?" "No need." Lu Yi waved his hand. "It's a long journey to the inner circle. They'll only waste their cultivation time going back and forth. I'm here to do something. I'll leave once I'm done. What does senior brother Yi want to do? If you need anything from Green Feather Mountain, just let me know. We'll have to ask Green Feather Mountain for help." Lu Yi looked at Su Zining. "I want to enter the Dragon Spring." Su Zining was puzzled. Senior brother Yi is already a 9th order heaven grade cultivator, he shouldn't be of much use in the Dragon Spring. Lu Yi shook his head. "I have my reasons." Saying so, he untied a storage bag from his waist and pushed it in front of Su Zining. "I'll have to trouble you to return to Green Feather Mountain sect and report this matter to your sect's elders. I know it's not time for the Dragon Spring to open yet, but I think your sect should have a way to let me in. These things will be my compensation." Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation P. Su Zining hurriedly said, "There's no need for compensation. Since senior brother Yi has a request, I'll report it truthfully." Lu Yi smiled and slapped the storage bag into his hand. "This compensation is for Green Feather Mountain. You'll have to listen to your sect's elders." Su Zining thought for a moment and nodded. Then, "Senior brother Yi, please wait a moment. I'll return to the sect." "Thank you." Su Zining left and Lu Yi waited in the hall. In just an hour, he returned. At the same time, he was accompanied by a middle-aged man. Lu Yi stood up. Su Zining introduced, "Senior brother Yi, this is Elder Yi Yang of my Green Feather Mountain." Lu Yi bowed. "Greetings, Elder Yi." Since he was an elder of Green Feather Mountain, then he was definitely a true Lake Realm expert. However, because he'd entered the Spirit Stream battlefield, the strength he revealed was only on par with Tian Ba. Yi Yang sized Lu Yi up and stroked his beard. "I've heard of Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi's reputation for a long time. Now that I've met you, you really are a dragon amongst men. Every generation produces new geniuses. I have no choice but to admit that I'm old. You're too kind, Elder Yi. I truly feel sorry for making you come all the way here. Lu Yi made small talk. He knew that Lu Yi was being so courteous to him. Firstly, it was because of his potential. Secondly, there were quite a few things in the storage bag that he'd given away. It was worth an entire 300,000 merit points, and it was something that Lu Yi had specially left behind. If it wasn't for that, then why would an elder like Lu Yi lower himself to come to the Spirit Stream battlefield? A true Lake Realm expert like Yi Yang would have to spend a huge amount of merit points just to enter the Spirit Stream battlefield. Little friend, you're exaggerating. Sit down and talk. Yi Yang gestured with his hand. He sat down again with Su Zining beside him. I heard from Zining that you want to enter the Dragon Spring. Yi Yang asked. Is it convenient for you? Yi Yang said, it's difficult for others to enter, but it's very easy for you. Oh. Why is that? Lu Yi was puzzled. Yi Yang smiled. If you want to enter the Dragon Spring, the Green Feather Mountain, the Tai Luo sect, and the Qin clan must agree. Only then can the Dragon Spring be opened. The Dragon Spring is related to the tempering of the disciples of the three clans. So, even if the Green Feather Mountain agrees and the other two clans don't, there's no way to open the Dragon Spring. Those two clans might not be willing to let others in, but with your reputation, I'm sure they won't dare to disagree. Would the Tai Luo sect and the Qin clan dare to say no if the House Destroyer Yi wanted to enter the Dragon Spring? Although the Spirit Stream battlefield had its own rules and the matters of the Outer Circle were handled by the people of the Outer Circle, the Myriad Devil Ridge had broken the rules more than once because they were targeting Lu Yi. Therefore, if Lu Yi broke the rules, most likely no one from the Myriad Devil Ridge would dare to say anything. If the Tai Luo sect and the Qin clan dared to disagree, Lu Yi could destroy their encampment with a lift of his hand. I see. Lu Yi nodded. It seems I will have to make another trip to the Tai Luo sect and the Qin clan. That's right. Yi Yang nodded. As long as you can persuade the Tai Luo sect and the Qin clan, the Green Feather Mountain will have no objections. This was the benefit of giving enough benefits. Yi Yang didn't even ask why Lu Yi wanted to enter the Dragon Spring. Of course, an experienced martial artist like him knew that everyone had their own secrets. It was not a wise move to rashly pry into other people's secrets. Lu Yi stood up immediately. Then I will make a trip. Yi Yang said with a smile, I will wait for your good news at the Dragon Spring peak of the 100-Peak Mountain. The encampment of the Tai Luo sect and the Qin clan was not far from the Green Feather Mountain encampment. It was only a few dozen miles away. The situation between the encampments of the sects in the Outer Circle was mostly the same. After all, the martial artists in the Outer Circle were not powerful. If the distance was too far, it would be difficult for any conflicts to occur. In the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Lu Yi arrived at the Tai Luo sect's encampment under the guidance of the map. Lu Yi didn't have a good impression of the Tai Luo sect. In the past, Han Zhiyu had tried to kill him. It was also this woman who had repeatedly exposed his past, causing Lu Yi to have a hard time fighting more than 46th Order martial artists. Lu Yi flew through the air and landed before the light curtain of the defensive array. He unsheathed the mountain coiling saber and slashed down. He didn't even use the flash saber technique for this slash. He only used the dual sharpness spirit rune. However, the light curtain of the defensive array shattered under this slash. The defensive arrays of the sects in the Outer Circle were generally weaker than the ones in the inner and core circles. This wasn't because the Tai Luo sect didn't have enough merit points to buy a good array foundation, but because the density of the world energy here was not as high as the inner and core circles. For something like a defensive array, the denser the world energy, the more effective it would be. Therefore, the density of the world energy in a sect's encampment was directly related to the power of the defensive array. With Lu Ye's current strength, he could break the defensive arrays of the sects in the Outer Circle with a single slash. The destruction of the defensive array caused a huge commotion. For a moment, many Tai Luo sect cultivators rushed out from their cultivation grounds. No one knew what had happened, so the scene was chaotic. It wasn't until someone saw a figure floating in the sky on a spirit artifact that they started to panic. A seventh-order cultivator stood up and asked boldly, "May I ask which fellow Taoist has come to our sect and why you have broken our Tai Luo sect's defensive array?" The newcomer was definitely from Grand Heaven Alliance. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for him to break their sect's defensive array. Moreover, judging from the aura of the newcomer, he was at least a cultivator who cultivated a heaven-grade secret art. Therefore, this seventh-order cultivator couldn't understand why a cultivator who should be cultivating in the core circle would come to the outer circle to show off. Blue Blood Sect, Lu Yi. Lu Yi said indifferently. When he introduced himself as Lu Yi at Blue Feather Mountain, no one could react. Now that he introduced himself as Lu Yi, the expressions of the Tai Luo sect cultivators changed drastically. They all retreated as if Lu Yi was some kind of scourge. "Call your elders here. I will wait for him at 100 Peaks Mountain's Dragon Spring Peak." With that, Lu Yi turned and left. Of course, he had the strength to kill all of the cultivators here, but only the weak would wield their blades against the weak. Not to mention, with his current Heavenly 9 cultivation base, if he really did kill these people, who knew how many merit points he would lose? Therefore, from beginning to end, he didn't intend to kill anyone. After he left, the Tai Luo sect's encampment was in chaos. Immediately, someone returned to the sect and reported the matter. For a moment, the Tai Luo sect's headquarters was on guard. They didn't know why the sect exterminator Yi had suddenly come to their encampment and asked the older generation to speak up. At this time, Lu Yi had already arrived at the Qin clan's encampment. Just like before, he broke the defensive array of the Qin clan's encampment, left a message, and left. A moment later, Lu Yi landed on 100 Peaks Mountain's Dragon Spring Peak. 2 years ago, he came here once and entered the Dragon Spring to temper his body. He obtained a scale. Now, his state of mind was completely different. There was a main hall on Dragon Spring Peak that was built by Blue Feather Mountain and Tai Luo sect together. The passage to the Dragon Spring was hidden under the main hall. Chapter 435. When Lu Yi entered the main hall, Yi Yang of the Green Feather Mountain had already arrived and was waiting for him. When he saw him arrive, Yi Yang chuckled. "You're so fast." "Excuse me." Walking into the main hall, Lu Yi followed the memory of entering the Dragon Spring to temper his body last time and came to a corner of the main hall. There should be an entrance here that led to the underground, but from the looks of it, the entrance was not obvious at all. It was obvious that there was some kind of method or restriction covering the entrance. Lu Yi looked for a moment and did not see anything. Then, he activated the spiritual patterns to strengthen his eyes. He didn't know if people from the Supreme Luo sect and the Qin clan would come. If these two houses were timid and did not dare to come, then he would have to open the Dragon Spring himself. He more or less had some experience in breaking formations. However, after observing for a moment, he realized that he had somewhat underestimated the barriers here. Even when he activated the spiritual patterns, he did not see much, not to mention breaking the barriers. Lu Yi suddenly asked, "Elder Yi, did the restriction that covers the entrance of this place originally exist?" Yi Yang said, "That's right." "Then how did your sect and those two houses learn the way to open it?" Yi Yang chuckled and said, "In fact, we don't know the way to open it, we only borrowed a piece of jade." According to the records of the sect, strange natural phenomena had attracted the attention of the Green Feather Mountain and the Supreme Luo sect. After a great battle, they found a piece of jade here. At that time, our sect and the Supreme Luo sect were on par with each other. Therefore, in the end, the jade was divided into 2 parts, which were kept by the Green Feather Mountain and the Supreme Luo sect. When needed, the 2 could be combined into one to open the passage to the Dragon Spring. Later on, when the Supreme Luo sect felt that they were not a match for the Green Feather Mountain, they roped in the Qin clan. Only this way, they were able to contend against the Qin clan until today. Because they wanted to rope in the Qin clan, the Supreme Luo sect had split the half jade plate they were keeping into two. Therefore, if we want to open the Dragon Spring, we must combine the jade plate held by the three houses. I see. What did you see? Yi Yang asked. The Green Feather Mountain had also studied the Dragon Spring. Unfortunately, they did not gain much. Lu Yi shook his head. I didn't see anything, I only felt that the barriers here were not set up by ordinary people. While the two of them were talking, Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked outside. Outside the main hall, two figures walked in side by side. They did not appear to be young and should be the elite warriors of the Supreme Luo sect and the Qin clan. Yi Yang's brows raised, and he scolded with a smile on his face. You two old bastards are still alive? One of them spoke in a low voice, even you, Yi Yang, are still alive, so how can we die? Both of them had interacted with each other in the Spirit Stream battlefield when they were younger. However, due to the distance between their respective sects, it was very difficult for them to meet after they had all ascended to the Cloud River realm. In the blink of an eye, over 100 years had passed. When they met again, he was no longer as high-spirited as before. She couldn't help but sigh. This little friend is Lu Ye. The old man who spoke looked at Lu Ye. Yi Yang said, young brother Yi, let me introduce them to you. This fellow who likes to spout shit is the Tai Luo sect's Zhao Xian, and that mute over there is the Qin clan's Qin Ming. Qin Ming snorted coldly to show that he wasn't a mute. Zhao Xian of the Supreme Luo sect looked at Lu Yi. Young brother, you're really impressive. The dignified Spirit Stream champion is not hanging around in the core circle, but has come to the outer circle to break the defensive formation of our sect and the Qin clan. What do you intend to do? Regardless of whether it was Zhao Xian or Qin Ming, both of them were at the 8th level of the Sky Realm. However, they didn't show the slightest bit of fear when facing Lu Yi. It was because they knew that if it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, it couldn't be avoided. If Lu Yi really wanted to harm them, then it was useless to be afraid. The strength of the Spirit Stream champion was obtained through repeated slashes. Moreover, when Lu Yi ascended the Spirit Stream champion, he was only at the 8th level of the Sky Realm. Now, he was at the 9th level, and no one in the entire Spirit Stream battlefield was a match for him. Although both of them were at the true lake stage, they probably couldn't even withstand a single slash from Lu Yi on the Spirit Stream battlefield. Open the Dragon Spring. Zhao Xian understood when he heard these words. Just as I thought. When he had received the message from his disciple, he had felt that Lu Yi had his eyes on Long Quan. Otherwise, why would a top disciple of the Spirit Stream sect come to such a remote place? Only Long Quan would be able to attract the attention of those experts. Qin Ming, who hadn't spoken until now, said, Can I ask why you want to enter the Dragon Spring? With your current strength, even if you enter the Dragon Spring to temper your body, you won't get much benefit. It would be completely useless. This was also what Zhao Xian wanted to know. Lu Yi pondered for a moment, then said, There is a mortal who has lived to 100 years old and is still hale and hearty and healthy. Do you two know why? Zhao Xian frowned and said, When a mortal reaches 100 years old, they are already very old. Unless they have cultivated a body-nourishing technique. Lu Yi shook his head. Qin Ming said, Then he must have consumed a spiritual medicine that can prolong his life. Lu Yi shook his head again. Why is that? Because old people never meddle in other people's business. Zhao Xian and Qin Ming were stunned when they heard this, but they finally understood what Lu Yi meant. Zhao Xian said, The Dragon Spring is related to the tempering of the disciples of the three sections. How can this be meddling in other people's business? If you don't explain it clearly, then forgive me for not cooperating. Lu Yi rubbed the hilt of his saber with his fingers. If I slash down, I don't know how many of your disciples will survive. You'd better consider it seriously. Zhao Xian waved his hand. There's no need to consider it. If anyone else wants to enter the Dragon Spring, my Tai Luo sect will definitely not agree. Since you want to enter, then let's enter. Brother Qin, what do you think? Qin Ming nodded. I have no objections. Yi Yang took a step forward and said with a smile, then let's open it. Open. The three of them each took out their own jade slit rings and poured their spiritual energy into them. The three jade slit rings glowed and attracted each other, quickly piecing together. It was a jade slit ring in the shape of a dragon. The jade slit ring vibrated as if there was an invisible force resonating with it. Accompanied by a buzzing sound from the belly of the mountain, a hole suddenly opened in a corner of the hall. It was dark and led underground. The three of them raised their hands and put away the three jade slit rings. The matter here is done. Farewell. As soon as Zhao Xian finished speaking, he cupped his fists and intended to leave. Lu Yi revealed an inquiring expression as he gazed at Yi Yang. Yi Yang said, they have nothing to do with us once we open the Dragon Spring, and this place will close automatically in a few days. Lu Yi nodded. Zhao Xian and Qin Ming immediately flashed out of the hall, withdrew their flying spirit artifacts, and shot into the sky before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Even though they seemed composed before Lu Yi, they were actually very nervous in their hearts. If they weren't afraid of infuriating Lu Yi, they wouldn't have dared to make this trip no matter what. Young brother, go on in. I'll keep watch outside for you. Thank you. Lu Yi went all the way down through the entrance. Just like the last time, there was a spiral staircase at the bottom. As he went deeper, the sound of hollow footsteps resounded. He walked for a long time before he finally arrived at the bottom and arrived before a bronze door. The bronze door was heavy, ancient, and extremely ancient. The figure of an enormous dragon was carved on the door, and it seemed like it was alive and extremely lifelike. The door was already open, and light red mist surged within it. Lu Yi stepped in and instantly felt a sense of weightlessness. When he sized up his surroundings, he'd already appeared in a secret room that was around 10 meters in length and width. The secret room was filled with light red mist, and there was a spring at the center of the room that surged with spring water. Lu Yi tried to absorb the mist here to temper his body, but he noticed that the blood qi contained within the mist was extremely thin, and it was of little use to a cultivator of the ninth heaven realm like him. This was also the reason why cultivators with slightly higher cultivations weren't able to temper their bodies in the Dragon Spring. It was because the mist contained too few things that were useful to cultivators. If one's cultivation was lower, then the improvement would be quite good, but if one's cultivation was above the 6th or 7th order, then it was practically useless. Yi flashed out from Hu Po's body and looked around curiously before she asked, Lu Yi, what are you doing here? To see an old friend, Lu Yi replied casually. An old friend? Yi was puzzled. When Lu Yi tempered his body in the Dragon Spring, Hu Pa hadn't followed him in, so Yi naturally hadn't come in as well. So, she didn't know what Lu Yi had encountered in the Dragon Spring. While speaking, Lu Yi sat down cross-legged. Thinking back to his last experience, when he was tempering his body in the Dragon Spring, he seemed to have a pair of huge blood-red eyes staring at him. At that time, and even for a long time afterwards, he felt that it might be an illusion. But as his cultivation grew higher and his understanding of the cultivation world of the 9 states deepened, Lu Yi gradually understood that it shouldn't be an illusion. What's more, he had obtained a scale in the Dragon Spring. That should be a genuine dragon scale. After obtaining the Phoenix True Fire, Lu Yi specifically sent a message to his second senior sister and learned about the so-called 4 sacred beasts. Azure Dragon, Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, and Black Tortoise. These were the 4 legendary sacred beasts of the 9 states cultivation world. The Vermilion Bird did exist, and the Phoenix True Fire that Lu Yi obtained was the best proof. And according to his second senior sister's speculation, Hoopa should have the bloodline of the white tiger, because there had never been a tiger-type monster beast that could transform its spirit body into a nightmare spirit, but Hoopa had such an ability. In addition, Hoopa had many divine abilities that tiger-type monster beasts didn't have. If the vermilion bird and the white tiger existed, then the azure dragon and the black tortoise must also exist. It was only at this time that Lu Yi was sure that what he obtained in the dragon spring was a real dragon scale. The dragon scale stored the dragon blood of a true dragon, which was why it had such a powerful effect on tempering his body. And this was the dragon spring, and the dragon scale was obtained from the dragon spring. Therefore, Lu Yi guessed that a true dragon was suppressed under the dragon spring. He came all the way here for no other reason than to get more dragon scales. This thing's effect on tempering his body was too strong. Whether it was himself, Hoopa, or the giant armor, they all needed it. How to get more dragon scales was the problem. Last time, the dragon scale suddenly appeared in front of him. In other words, it was given to him by the true dragon that was suppressed here. He felt that the huge blood-red eyes should be the dragon's eyes. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. The true dragon that was suppressed here had given him a dragon scale for no reason. It must have wanted something, so Lu Yi felt that he could start from this aspect. Chapter 436. Shui Yuan knew that Lu Yi had a dragon scale because she had seen Lu Yi use the blood qi in the dragon scale to temper his body. At that time, she had asked Lu Yi about the origin of the dragon scale, and Lu Yi naturally did not hide it. Shui Yuan speculated that there might be some secret or opportunity hidden under the dragon spring. Lu Yi had long made up his mind that when his cultivation reached the limit of the spirit stream stage, he must make a trip to the 100-peak mountain to see if he could obtain more dragon scales. Although the Green Feather Mountain, the Tai Luo sect, and the Qin clan had occupied the dragon spring for so many years, they should not be clear about the situation under the dragon spring. Otherwise, they would have started exploring long ago. In other words, the dragon scale that Lu Yi had obtained might be the only one. If his speculation was true, then there was really a true dragon suppressed under the dragon spring. But why would that true dragon give him a dragon scale for no reason? This was definitely not because of luck or because he was pleasing to the eye, but because of another deeper reason. There was probably something on him that other cultivators did not have. Thinking back to the various things that happened in the dragon spring last time, Lu Yi had a faint guess in his heart. In the secret room, he urged his spiritual power and began to construct one spirit pattern after another. Sharpness, defense, spirit gathering. Bloodstain, sunshine, consolidation, wind travel, heavy pressure. Stab, breath control, insight. Leave a message, leave a picture, spirit storage, scuba. Explosion, concealment. Golden arc, thunder attraction, flying wings. Other than the fire phoenix spirit pattern, he used all the spirit patterns that he had mastered so far. He constructed them one by one. He repeated it a total of 3 times. Spiritual power surged, the spirit patterns changed, and the connection was extremely smooth. Even if a spirit pattern master like Madame Yun came here to see it, she would probably be shocked. Because even with her attainments in the Tao of spirit patterns, it was impossible for her to construct so many spirit patterns in such a short period of time, not to mention that she could connect all kinds of spirit patterns without any mistakes. However, with the help of the talent tree, Lu Yi easily did it. There was no movement. Lu Yi could not help but frown. Did he make a mistake? If he really made a mistake, then he was afraid that he would have made a wasted trip. He did not feel too much regret after all, everything here was just his own guess. His understanding of the cultivation world of the 9 regions was not deep, so there was nothing he could do about some things being wrong. Stood up, he stepped out of the room. His figure suddenly stopped. His powerful perception allowed him to sense a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. His skin instantly tensed up, and he felt as if his entire body was being pricked by thousands of needles. There was an indescribable stabbing pain. Amber, who was squatting on his shoulder, was the first to explode. He suddenly prostrated himself. A low growl came from his throat. Lu Yi raised his hand and gripped the Pan Shan saber. Large beads of sweat rolled down from his forehead. He slowly turned around, and his leaden body came face to face with a pair of huge blood-red eyes. Those eyes were filled with indifference and a sense of superiority. Being stared at by those eyes, one could not help but tremble. Lu Yi suddenly felt as insignificant as an ant. He was not mistaken. It was very likely that a true dragon was being suppressed here. And the huge blood-red pupils he felt last time weren't an illusion. This time, it appeared again. At this moment, above the dragon spring, a dragon head formed purely from blood energy filled more than half of the secret chamber. There were 2 dragon horns on the dragon head. It was covered in fine dragon scales, with dragon whiskers fluttering under its chin. Endless dragon might filled the air. Lu Yi felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on his shoulders. It was so heavy that he couldn't breathe. The huge pressure caused Lu Ye's body to bend slightly. Even if he used all his strength, he couldn't resist it. Roar! Amber roared, and visible waves of air rushed forward. At the same time, the figure of the fire phoenix standing on the talent tree became active, and a loud cry came from Lu Ye's body. The indifferent dragon eyes revealed a look of surprise. The Pan Shan saber was unsheathed, and Lu Ye's right arm swelled. He slashed down at the dragon head. In a flash. This slash, which was enough to make a heavenly 9 physiques cultivator regret on the spot, did not cause any damage to the blood energy dragon head. After all, the dragon head was not a real thing. However, with this slash, Lu Yi only felt that he had cut something, and the heavy pressure suddenly disappeared. He exhaled softly. He looked at the dragon head. You deliberately chose me because you want me to save you? It was just a guess before, but now it was confirmed. Lu Yi didn't know why the dragon head's body was suppressed here. But it was definitely unwilling to be suppressed like this. Since it was unwilling, it had to find someone to save him. The dragon head looked down on other cultivators, but Lu Ye's talent in the Tao of Spirit runes was obvious. This gave the dragon head a glimmer of hope. That's why he tempered his body here when he was in the 5th order and gained a dragon scale. However, looking at the current situation, Lu Yi wanted to leave. It was still so powerful even though it was suppressed. If it was released, how fierce would it be? Young man, you are very smart. The dragon head suddenly said. This is not the attitude of someone asking for help. Lu Ye's eyes drooped. The other party first played hard to get, then suddenly appeared when he was about to leave and gave him a show of strength, almost making him kneel on the ground. Obviously, it was not a good thing. The current you is too weak. Then give me something that can make me stronger, such as the dragon scale from last time. Give me 100 pieces. The dragon head laughed loudly, and the deafening laughter shook the secret room. Amidst the laughter, the dragon head gradually dissipated. Lu Yi frowned. However, after the dragon head dissipated, the dragon spring suddenly surged. Then, a dragon scale emerged from the spring, followed by another, a third, a fourth. A total of 5 dragon scales emerged before the dragon spring returned to its original appearance. Cultivate well, young man. When you understand the truth of this world, come find me again. I look forward to our next meeting. The voice came from an unknown place and clearly reached Lu Ye's ears. It seemed to be certain that Lu Yi would come looking for it again. Lu Yi stepped forward and muttered, stingy, while putting away the 5 dragon scales. These 5 dragon scales were about the same size as the last time, only the size of a palm, but Lu Yi could feel that the vitality contained in them was much richer, almost several times stronger. He excitedly put the 5 dragon scales into his storage bag. Lu Yi recalled the dragon head's words before he left. The dragon head obviously had a hidden meaning and mentioned something about the truth of this world. Lu Yi was just a spirit stream realm cultivator, so how could he know the truth of this world? He'd just put the dragon scales away when a repulsive force came from the surroundings, and then his vision blurred before he appeared outside the bronze door. The door closed slowly. Lu Yi gazed at the dragon image inscribed on the door, and he noticed that the dragon head on the image was similar to the one he'd seen. A true dragon was being suppressed beneath the dragon spring. This was probably something that no one had expected. He walked back along the path he'd come from and entered the hall. Yi Yang was still waiting for him. He couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Lu Yi because Lu Yi had only gone down for less than half a day, and he hadn't expected that Lu Yi would return so quickly. "Young friend, have you finished?" Lu Yi nodded, and then he shook his head. Even though the situation was similar to what he'd expected, it was much more complicated than he'd imagined. Yi Yang didn't ask about it in detail. Some things weren't easy to ask, and there was no need to ask. It was fine as long as he knew. "I'll be taking my leave now that the matter here is done." Yi Yang tried to persuade him to stay. "It's rare for you to come here, so why don't you come visit my sect?" "No, second senior sister sent me a message and asked me to return early." Yi Yang nodded. "Then I won't keep you. Young friend, have a safe journey. Farewell." Lu Yi withdrew his spirit vessel, stepped onto it, and shot into the sky before vanishing in the blink of an eye. It had taken him almost 10 days to get here, and it was the same when he returned. However, he hadn't wasted any time on the way here. Lu Yi had been studying the saber techniques he'd obtained from the Mad Saber sect. As for flying, Yi had been reminding him so that he wouldn't get lost or fly in the wrong direction. Lu Yi only returned to the Jade Blood sect after 10 days. He raised his head and glanced at the nearby spirit mountains and noticed that Gray had returned. When he withdrew his gaze, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. "Brother Yi, you're back." Lu Yi looked over and noticed that it was the guardian of the Third Sacred Academy, Situ Han, and a few other disciples of the Third Sacred Academy. "Brother Situ." Lu Yi greeted. "Why are you here? Did something happen at the Third Sacred Academy?" "Nothing." Situ Han chuckled. The profound Azure Palace and Crescent Moon Pavilion suffered heavy losses. "Everything is fine at my sect now. I heard that you're about to advance into the Cloud River realm, so I came to watch the ceremony." Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. "It's just advancing into the Cloud River realm." Situ Han looked at him in confusion. "Brother Yi doesn't know." "Know what?" Lu Yi was confused. Situ Han chuckled. "It seems that Brother Yi really doesn't know. But that's fine. You'll naturally find out later." Just as Lu Yi was about to ask for clarification, someone else came over to greet him. Soon, more and more people gathered. Those who came were all cultivators from the core region, and they were all led by the guardian or deputy guardian. Several people from each sect came. Lu Yi had heard of some of them, especially the experts on the spirit stream list. Even if he hadn't seen them before, he had at least heard of their names. However, Lu Yi had never seen or even heard of most of them. They were all here to watch the ceremony. Lu Yi was really confused. He was just about to advance into the Cloud River realm. Why did it seem like a grand event? It actually attracted the guardian and deputy guardians of the various core region sects to come and watch the ceremony. He had been wondering why there were so many people in his sect's encampment. At this moment, the Jade Blood sect's encampment could be said to be overcrowded. The few hundred disciples of his sect were one thing, but the few hundred sects in the core region had sent close to 2,000 people. After Duan Yi asked his second senior sister for permission, he spent a sum of merit points to temporarily expand the encampment. Not only that, but a high platform was also built in front of the Mystery Hall's plaza. It was said that this was the place where Lu Yi would advance from the Spirit Stream realm to the Cloud River realm. The high platform was more than 100 feet tall, ensuring that everyone who came to watch the ceremony could see it clearly. Lu Yi was confused. He had just gone out for a trip, and it had taken him about 20 days to go back and forth. This world had suddenly become somewhat unfamiliar to him. Chapter 437. Almost all the sects in the core circle had sent people over, which was a good thing for Jade Blood's sect because the people who came were all led by the guardian or deputy guardian. In the past few days, Jade Blood's sect had already signed an alliance contract with these sects. In the future, if Jade Blood's sect's disciples entered the core circle to cultivate, they would have a lot of choices. Almost every sect in the core circle could choose. All parties were guests, so Jade Blood's sect naturally treated them well. Moreover, Jade Blood's sect hadn't been so lively for many years. After chatting with the guests for a while, Lu Yi returned to the sect through the Heaven's Fate Pillar. There were also people coming and going in the sect, but they were all disciples of the sect. When they saw Lu Yi, they all saluted him. Lu Yi found Shui Yuan, who was busy. When she was done, he asked, "Second senior sister, I'm just breaking through to the Cloud River realm. Why is there such a big commotion?" Shui Yuan stroked her hair and said, "Little junior brother, have you heard of the Heaven's Fate Blessing?" Lu Yi shook his head. He had never heard of it. The Heaven's Fate Blessing is a legend. The last time it appeared was a few decades ago. Shui Yuan's eyes showed a look of reminiscence, as if she was thinking of something in the past. After a long pause, she said, "It's extremely difficult to get the Heaven's Fate Blessing. It requires you to constantly kill enemies above your realm and accumulate the attention of Heaven's Fate. When you break through to a great realm, Heaven's Fate will bestow you a blessing. Killing enemies above your realm may not be difficult for some disciples from big sects. But the difficult part is being able to kill enemies above your realm. Looking at this generation of cultivators, only little junior brother has the opportunity and qualifications to do so." Lu Yi had been cultivating since the day he started. He had been fighting enemies above his realm. Before reaching the fifth order, it wasn't obvious. But after the Battle of the Golden Light Peak, this accumulation became obvious. On the Golden Light Peak, except for the fifth order cultivator in the first battle, the rest were all sixth order cultivators. In that battle, Li Baxian and the cultivators of Grand Heaven Alliance had already seen the signs of the Heaven's Fate Blessing. But at that time, Lu Yi was still far away from breaking through to the Cloud River realm, so it was only the beginning. Since then, whether it was in the outer circle, inner circle, or the core circle, Lu Yi encountered enemies with A8 or 90% higher cultivation than him. But those people, without exception, none of them were a match for Lu Yi. He had even reached the top of the Spirit Stream Division when he was only a Heaven 8, and had dominated the entire Spirit Stream Division. Now that he was a Heaven 9, he was practically invincible. Along the way, he had accumulated a lot. Thus, the Heavenly Secret Blessing was logical. Accumulating the attention of the Heavenly Secrets? Lu Ye's heart stirred. "Senior apprentice sister, are you saying that the heavenly secrets, the omnipresent heavenly secrets of the cultivation world are not simple? Little junior brother, your cultivation is still low. You can't feel it clearly, but you'll understand when your cultivation gets higher." Lu Yi nodded. "Then what are the benefits of this blessing?" "I'm not sure about the specific benefits. This was because there were too few people who were qualified to be blessed by the heavens. Furthermore, all the information was top secret. It is not allowed to be revealed. The last person who was blessed by the heavens was our eldest senior brother. However, eldest senior brother had received the heavenly secret blessing when he was at the Yunhejinjian Lake. Since then, his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. He even led our sect to glory. However, you also know our sect's situation. Our success was because of eldest senior brother, and our failure was also because of him." Eldest senior brother. Lu Yi murmured. He had heard of this eldest senior brother whom he had never met before. "Don't think too much about it. No one knows if you can receive the heavenly secret blessing. It's just that everyone thinks that you have a high chance of receiving it. That's why so many people came to watch the ceremony. Lu Yi nodded. When are you going to advance? Shui Yuan asked. Anytime. Then let's set it for 3 days later. I'll listen to senior apprentice sister. Shui Yuan looked at him as if she was watching her child grow up. Suddenly, she laughed. So fast. You're going to advance to the Yunhe realm. After a pause, she said, but after advancing to the Yunhe realm, it's time for you to change your spirit weapon. I was just about to ask senior apprentice sister about this. Lu Yi was also having a headache about this. All his spirit weapons now, whether it was the mountain pan saber or the imperial weapons in the weapon casket, or even the flying spirit weapons, they were all only 9 restriction low-grade spirit weapons. Low-grade spirit weapons were usually used by spirit stream realm cultivators. After his cultivation reached the Yunhe realm, it was time for him to switch to mid-grade spirit weapons above 9 restriction. Imperial weapons and flying spirit weapons could be changed at any time. Previously, the large sects of the Myriad Demon Ridge had paid many spirit weapons. They included all kinds of spirit weapons. If Lu Yi wanted to change them, he could do so at any time. Only the Mountain Pan Saber, this saber had been with him for 2 years. It corresponded with his saber. If he changed it, even if it was a long saber with the same shape as the Mountain Pan Saber, Lu Yi might not be able to use it well. If he wanted to reach the same level as his saber, he might need a long time to accumulate experience. It wasn't worth it. But if he didn't change it, the Mountain Pan Saber wouldn't be able to keep up with his cultivation progress. Moreover, after 2 years of fighting, the Mountain Pan Saber's blade had many dents and couldn't be used much. He told Shui Yuan about his worries. Shui Yuan smiled. Swordsmen like you and your 4th senior apprentice brother all have special feelings for their spirit weapons. They won't change them easily. If you want to solve this problem, it's simple. You just have to upgrade it. Upgrade it? Pay some price and ask a refiner to upgrade your saber to the level of a middle-grade spirit weapon. However, the cost is a bit high because a refiner who can upgrade a spirit weapon is at least at the level of a refiner grandmaster. Refiners below the grandmaster level don't have this ability. But there are benefits to doing this. You can make some requests according to your needs. It's like tailoring your weapon. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. There's such a good thing. Does senior apprentice sister know a grandmaster refiner who can do this? I do, but it's far away and they're not in our province. That's fine, actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Go to the Tianji Treasury later and connect your mind to the Tianji Treasury. Someone will accept the upgrade. The Tianji Treasury has such a function. Lu Yi was surprised. Every time he went to the Tianji Treasury, he was only there to buy or sell things. You'll know when you try it. But remember, the transactions there only accept merit. Okay. Lu Yi said and hurried into the Tianji Hall. He connected his mind to the Tianji Pillar and entered the Tianji Treasury. The huge treasury stored a dazzling array of goods. The first time Lu Yi saw it, he was dazzled. But after saying some specific words, the goods here would decrease. Only the goods that fit the criteria would remain. The more criteria there were, the fewer goods that fit the criteria. In the end, the cultivators who entered the Tianji Treasury could easily obtain what they wanted. Of course, the prerequisite was that they had enough merit. The transactions in the Tianji Treasury only accepted merit. Task: upgrade the spirit weapon. Lu Yi said softly. The huge treasury distorted and Lu Yi found himself in a small room. There was only a table in front of him. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Understanding this, Lu Yi placed the mountain saber on the table. He didn't know how long it would take for someone to accept this task. Just as Lu Yi was about to leave, the space in front of him distorted and a blurry figure appeared. This was the first time he saw someone else in the Tianji Treasury. He couldn't help but size up the person. He couldn't tell the person's cultivation or gender. The person grabbed the mountain saber and sized it up. He said with a disappointed tone, a mere low-grade spirit weapon. To the person who came, this was obviously a matter that did not have much to gain. What request? Although the person was disappointed, he didn't leave. After all, there weren't many opportunities to accept such a task in the Tianji treasury. Every bit counted. The shape and length should remain the same. The 18 restrictions should be strong enough. As for the weight, it would be best if it was 3 times heavier. As Lu Ye's strength increased, a spirit weapon like the mountain saber was already too light for him. If it could be 3 times heavier, it would be more convenient to use. As for the sharpness, he didn't need it. After all, every time he chopped down, he would add sharpness runes. As long as it was strong enough, it would be fine. The request isn't low. Give me a price. Lu Yi thought for a moment. 800 merit points. Low-grade spirit weapons in the Tianji treasury were usually sold for 30 to 150 merit points. Mid-grade spirit weapons were sold for 200 to 500 merit points. Lu Yi offered 800 merit points, which was enough to buy the best mid-grade spirit weapon. That's too little. If I want to meet your request, just the materials alone will cost me at least 600 merit points. The person snorted. Brat, if you want to upgrade your spirit weapon, don't use the price of the spirit weapon to measure it. How much do you want? If you don't have 2,000 merit points, it's not worth this old man's effort. Deal. Lu Yi currently had 100,000 merit points. What was a mere 2,000 merit points to him? As long as he could upgrade the mountain saber, not to mention 2,000 merit points, he could even accept a little more. His straightforwardness stunned the person. He was secretly annoyed. He didn't know which great power this disciple came from, but he was actually so generous. If he had known earlier, he would have asked for a higher price. Please sign the Tianji contract, the person said. A moment later, the two of them left their imprints on the Tianji contract, stating the price Lu Yi had to pay, his various requests, and the time limit. The time limit was very important. After all, the mountain saber would be taken away by the other party. If the other party didn't return it, it would be troublesome. And the time limit on the Tianji contract was 3 days. Lu Yi couldn't help but sigh. When one's refining skills reached the Grandmaster level, they could earn 2,000 merit points in 3 days. This was too easy to earn. Lu Yi withdrew his consciousness from the Tianji treasury and went to find his second senior sister, Shui Yuan. The problem of the mountain saber could be considered solved. Now, he had to deal with his own flying spirit weapon. Last time, he had given his treasures worth 50 to 60 million merit points to Shui Yuan. They were now in the Jade Blood Sect's treasury. He received the key from his second senior sister and entered the treasury. Chapter 438. 3 days later, in the Jade Blood Sect's encampment, Lu Yi sat cross-legged on a high platform in front of the heavenly secret hall. Dozens of feet away from the high platform, there were cultivators who had come to watch the ceremony from all directions. The sky above and the ground below were filled with people. These spirit stream realm cultivators didn't know much about blessings from the heavens, but the older generation knew that in this generation of cultivators, when Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect broke through to the Cloud River realm, it was highly likely that he would receive a blessing from the heavens. This was because the majority of the enemies Lu Yi had killed along the way were of higher cultivation than him. Under the orders of the older generation, the younger generation of cultivators would gather in the Jade Blood Sect's encampment. No one knew how much the heavenly secret blessings could benefit a cultivator, but no one wanted to miss the opportunity to observe. Even if they were wrong and Lu Yi didn't receive the heavenly secret blessings, the younger generation of cultivators wouldn't lose much, just wasting a few days of cultivation time. After all these years, there weren't many opportunities for the core realm cultivators to gather together. Being able to interact with each other and broaden the horizons of the disciples was a benefit in itself. Although there were many people, the encampment was completely silent. On the high platform, Lu Yi felt a bit of pressure. He had only broken through to the Cloud River realm, but he had attracted so many people to come watch. He suddenly discovered that he had unknowingly gained such a huge influence on the spirit stream battlefield. Thinking back to what his second senior sister had said before he left the sect, there was no need to care about the heavenly secret blessings. If there was one, it would be best. If there wasn't, then there was no need to force it. Some of the pressure disappeared. The 9 small circulatory systems in his body slowly stopped under his control. His cultivation base also fell from the heaven 9th layer. Until his spiritual energy stagnated in his spiritual cavities, there was no more movement. He had seen giant armor break through to the Cloud River realm in the Myriad Poisons Forest. Furthermore, it wasn't difficult for cultivators to break through to the Cloud River realm from the Spirit Stream realm as long as they had enough spiritual cavities. Connecting all the spiritual cavities according to the cultivation method, completing the large circulatory system would naturally allow one to break through. So he knew what he had to do now. Thinking back to the various methods recorded in the Great Sun-colored glass art, he circulated his spiritual energy according to the cultivation method. Starting from the source of the spiritual cavities, connecting spiritual cavities one after another. The dormant spiritual energy once again surged through his spiritual cavities. The more spiritual cavities he connected, the faster and more ferocious the spiritual energy would flow. Until a certain moment. The 360 apertures were connected, and the flowing spiritual energy once again flowed into the source aperture. At this moment, the spiritual energy in his body began to flow from the source of his spiritual cavities. The origin of the spiritual aperture ends. The great heavenly cycle was completed. Lu Ye's body buzzed as his spirit power surged like a raging river. Invisible waves of air swept out in all directions. An indescribable power burst forth. Lingxi Jinyun River. Back then in the forest of 1,000 poisons. After giant armor advanced to the Cloud River realm, it was immediately rejected by the heavens and sent out of the spirit stream battlefield. He immediately returned to the Tianji Palace. At this moment, after Lu Yi advanced to the Cloud River realm, he could also clearly feel the repulsion from the world around him. He felt as if he was in an extremely crowded environment. Every inch of space around him was trying to squeeze him out. However, at this moment, a heavenly secret suddenly descended from the heavens, and the omnipresent repulsive feeling instantly disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the surrounding cultivators were in an uproar. Because above Lu Ye's head, a slowly rotating 7-colored lotus had suddenly appeared, and was falling straight towards him. A blessing from the heavens. Someone exclaimed. Although they had long known from their elders that Lu Ye's advancement to the Cloud River realm this time was very likely to receive a blessing from the heavens, before the blessing descended, no one dared to guarantee it. Until this moment, the heavens really did bestow a blessing. It was a 7-colored lotus that had descended from the sky. It was not a real thing, but more like an illusion, and also seemed to be formed by an inexplicable energy. The moment this 7-colored lotus appeared, heaven and earth were filled with a unique fragrance that made people feel refreshed and refreshed. The body felt light. The treasured lotus descended, enveloping Lu Yi within. At first glance, Lu Ye's figure seemed to have been enshrouded. At first glance, it was as if Lu Yi was sitting in a 7-colored lotus. The lotus slowly rotated, and the space around Lu Yi also became colorful. All kinds of mysterious illusions appeared and disappeared. There was also a layer of lotus shadows that appeared and disappeared as the lotus rotated, repeating the cycle. A strange energy overflowed, filling the entire Jade Blood Sect's encampment. Some quick-witted cultivators tried to swallow and spit out the energy. To their surprise, they found that the energy here could strengthen their physique and improve their mind. Hurry up and cultivate. Sensing this abnormality, the cultivator hurriedly shouted. The cultivators standing on the ground immediately sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. Those who were flying in the air to watch the ceremony also hurriedly looked for a place to land. Less than 30 breaths after the seven-colored lotus descended, the entire Jade Blood sect's encampment, including the sect's disciples and the cultivators who came to watch the ceremony, had all entered a state of cultivation. Everyone could feel the benefits of the strange energy and were overjoyed, knowing that they had made the right choice in coming to watch the ceremony. Just the overflowing energy had such an effect, and Lu Yi, who was sitting in the lotus, could feel it even more clearly. After the omnipresent repulsive force disappeared, he could clearly feel a gentle energy pouring into his body. While tempering his body, it also strengthened his soul. This feeling was similar to when he swallowed the spiritual mist in the heaven's mystery pool, but the benefits were much greater. Disregarding everything else, he had entered the heaven's mystery pool 4 times. The last time he went in, it was useless, but he could clearly feel the benefits of the baptism of the heaven's mystery blessing. Time passed little by little, and the Jade Blood sect's encampment was quiet. Until a certain moment, some cultivators slowly opened their eyes and looked up, but they could no longer see Lu Ye's figure. There was no one on the high platform, so they knew that Lu Yi had advanced to the Cloud River realm and left the Spirit Stream battlefield. More and more cultivators opened their eyes and silently sensed the changes in their bodies, each of them beaming with joy. There was no other reason. This time, everyone had obtained different degrees of benefits from the ceremony. Generally speaking, their bodies and minds had become stronger. There were also some who had unknowingly opened spiritual cavities that had not been opened for a long time. There were even some who had discovered that the pill toxins in their bodies had decreased, and their spiritual energy had become purer. They had only been affected by the aftershocks of the heaven's mystery blessing, but they had already obtained so many benefits. What kind of benefits had Lu Yi, the main character, obtained? While the Jade Blood sect's encampment was bustling with excitement, the various sects in Myriad Devil Ridge were also celebrating. This was because one of the 3 disasters of the Spirit Stream battlefield, Lu Yi, had finally advanced to the Cloud River realm. Just a moment ago, Lu Yi's name, which had been at the top of the Spirit Stream list, had suddenly disappeared, replaced by Lan Zi of Boundless Island. Lu Yi could not have died, so the only possibility was that he had advanced to the Cloud River realm. Everyone was celebrating. It had not been easy, but they had finally managed to get rid of him. In the future, there would no longer be a situation where such a large camp was controlled by a single person on the Spirit Stream battlefield. The suffocating mountain that had been pressing down on their heads had disappeared, and the Myriad Devil Ridge, which had been silent for a long time, felt that it was time to straighten their backs. When Lu Yi had been at the Spirit Stream battlefield, the various Myriad Devil Ridge sects had been living a miserable life. No one had dared to make any big moves for fear of being targeted by this star of disaster. Now, he had advanced to the Cloud River realm. In the future, he would enter the Cloud River battlefield, not the Spirit Stream battlefield. This was a day worth celebrating, and also a day worth remembering. Many of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators finally revealed long-awaited smiles, and they were just short of beating drums and gongs to send Lu Yi off. But soon, another piece of news came, and the joy of the Myriad Devil Ridge was shrouded in a layer of fog. When Lu Yi had advanced to the Cloud River realm, he had received a blessing from Tianji. This was the attention and acknowledgement of Tianji. Since ancient times, there had been very few people who had received Tianji's blessings, but any person who had received Tianji's blessings would have great achievements in the future. The last person who had received Tianji's blessings was also from the Jade Blood sect. In the end, that guy had led the Grand Heaven Alliance to crush the Myriad Devil Ridge so badly that even his parents could not recognize him. In the end, if he had not been so obstinate and self-opinionated, the Myriad Devil Ridge would have been hiding in a dark corner, struggling at death's door. Because of Tianji's blessings, the good mood of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had been turned into a mess. They secretly cursed Lu Yi for being so hateful. He had advanced to the Cloud River realm, but he still did not let them feel at ease. This was a classic case of wanting to disgust you before leaving. In the Jade Blood sect's main sect, Lu Ye sat cross-legged in the Tianji Hall, silently feeling the changes in his body. The 360 acupoints in his body were circulating the great circulatory cycle. His spirit energy flowed like a river. The advancement of a large realm meant that his strength had increased by a lot. Lu Ye estimated that his strength had increased by at least half the time he had advanced to the Cloud River realm. This could be seen from the speed at which the spirit energy flowed in his body. The speed at which the spirit energy flowed in his body now was incomparable to before. What puzzled him was Tianji's blessings. Under Tianji's blessings, his physique had been significantly strengthened, and so had his mind. The effect was probably equivalent to the sum of the previous 2 baptisms in the Tianji pool. But after such a big battle, was that all the benefits he had received? Lu Ye felt that something was not right. He did not know what it was like when his eldest senior brother had received Tianji's blessings a few decades ago. Because there were no detailed records, even Shui Yuan could not describe it clearly. At that time, Shui Yuan was not very old. But if Tianji's blessings only had such a small benefit, it did not match its legendary status. He did not understand. Perhaps there was something he had not discovered. Lu Ye could only comfort himself like this. After inspecting his body and confirming that the great circulatory cycle in his body was running smoothly and there was nothing wrong with it, Lu Ye was about to stand up when he suddenly felt a movement from the battlefield imprint. He checked and found that it was Tianji's reminder that it was time to meet with the Weapon Refinement Grandmaster. He quickly raised his hand and pressed it on the Tianji pillar. His mind connected to the Tianji treasure vault, and he quickly appeared in the small room from before. Chapter 439. In that mysterious room, Lu Ye's consciousness materialized. There was a person waiting in front of him, most likely the weapon refining grandmaster who had accepted his request last time. But what made Lu Yi extremely surprised was that he could actually see this person's appearance clearly. It was a rather seductive woman. She was young, about 30 years old. Her skin was white and tender, and she wore a close-fitting floral dress that outlined her exquisite curves. Lu Yi blinked, somewhat confused. The last time he saw this person, they were wrapped in a thick fog. He couldn't tell if they were a man or a woman, nor could he see their appearance. Even their voices weren't real. From their point of view, Lu Yi looked the same. This was the protection of heaven's secrets. This was because many people were unwilling to reveal their true identity when making such a transaction. Therefore, Tianji would bestow a layer of protection when making such a transaction in the Tianji treasury, making it difficult for both parties to deduce the other party's identity through their gender and voice. But now, Lu Yi was able to see the other party so clearly. What was going on? Lu Ye's first thought was that the other party might have forgotten to disguise themselves. But disguises weren't something that one could do on their own accord. It was a protection bestowed by heaven's secrets. Regardless of whether one was willing or not, they would be wrapped in fog upon entering this place. So the problem lay with him. The only difference between him and 3 days ago was that his cultivation had risen from Spirit Stream to Cloud River. But this wasn't enough for him to see through the other party's disguise. Was this a blessing from heaven's secrets? Just as Lu Yi was trying to figure out what was going on, the woman spoke, "Kid, your spirit tool is ready. Check it yourself." Her voice no longer had the disguise from before, and it sounded soft and tender. Saying so, she handed over the mountain pan saber. Lu Yi took it and felt its weight on his wrist. Compared to 3 days ago, the mountain pan saber was undoubtedly much heavier, but this weight suited Lu Ye's cultivation. He raised his hand and pulled out the mountain pan saber. Its sharpness flashed and quickly receded. The saber's shape didn't change at all, but the blade's color was dyed black, as if it contained boundless killing intent. The original cracks on the blade were no longer there, having been completely repaired. The words Pan Mountain were engraved on one side of the blade's hilt. This was the Pan Mountain blade's name. When Lu Yi obtained this blade, these two words were already there. However, at this moment, there was a feather pattern on the other side of the hilt. It was obviously left behind by the tool refining grandmaster, but Lu Yi didn't know what this feather represented. The entire saber gave off an extremely heavy feeling. Lu Yi carefully inspected the restrictions within the mountain plate saber. After confirming that there were 18 restrictions, he sheathed the saber and nodded slightly. Not bad. Then we have a deal. The woman took out the Heaven's Fate contract she had signed with Lu Yi last time. With a slight wave of her hand, the Heaven's Fate contract burst into flames. At the same time, Lu Yi felt the battlefield imprint on the back of his hand move, and 2,000 merit points were deducted. Let's meet again if fate allows it. As the woman spoke, she was about to leave when she suddenly remembered something. Next time, don't bother me with low-grade spirit tools. Hearing a woman in her 30s call herself an old man. Lu Ye's expression was a little strange. The woman's figure quickly disappeared. Lu Yi didn't leave immediately. He stood in place and thought for a moment before saying, I want a spirit tool to be upgraded. He casually took out a low-grade spirit tool from his storage bag and waited quietly. A moment later, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked up and saw an old man. Just like before, this old man wasn't shrouded in thick fog, so Lu Yi could clearly see his appearance. You want to upgrade a spirit tool? The old man asked in a deep voice. Lu Yi nodded and handed over the spirit tool in his hand. The old man took it and looked at it for a moment before saying with disdain, a low-grade spirit tool. Last time, the woman also spoke with the same disdainful tone, as if to tool refining grandmasters, taking low-grade spirit tools to be upgraded was an insult. However, since he was already here, the old man still asked, name your price. What if he ran into a sucker, 100 merit points. As soon as Lu Yi spoke, the old man angrily threw the spirit tool back and disappeared. Before leaving, he scolded Lu Yi, there's something wrong with your head. A moment later, Lu Yi left the small room with a pensive look on his face. He was sure that in the Tianji treasury, other people's disguises didn't exist to him at all. The increase in his cultivation realm was obviously not the reason, so the only reason was the blessing of Tianji. After the blessing, his disguise was still there, but other people's disguises were equivalent to nothing in his eyes. Was this a privilege given to him by Tianji? But there were no practical benefits, so what was the use of such a privilege? He couldn't use it to spy on other people's identities and then blackmail them. Those people were all tool refining grandmasters, so there was nothing to blackmail. Walking out of the Tianji hall, Lu Yi pulled out his mountain saber and poured his spirit energy into it before swinging it a few times. The saber was still the same saber, but it had been upgraded to a mid-grade spirit tool. Lu Ye's cultivation realm had also broken through, so the power of his slashes was much greater than before. Lu Yi might not be used to the increased weight for the time being, but it was indeed suitable for his current realm. It would be fine once he got used to it. Returning the saber to its scabbard, Lu Ye's heart moved again. The weapon box at his waist buzzed and 9 imperial weapons flew out. These 9 imperial weapons were no longer the original spirit tools. The original 9 were all low-grade spirit tools, but now they were all mid-grade spirit tools. Lu Yi had changed them to mid-grade spirit tools. Before reaching the Cloud River realm, Lu Yi had some difficulty using these 9 imperial weapons, mainly because his spirit energy couldn't keep up. But after reaching the Cloud River realm, it was much easier for him to use them. After reaching the next realm, he had to familiarize himself with various methods for a while. After testing the imperial weapons, Lu Yi found Shui Yuan and handed his mountain saber to her, second senior sister. Look at the mark left on the saber's hilt. There's no problem, right? Shui Yuan turned the mountain saber in her hand and looked at the feather-like mark. smiling, "There's no problem." Some tool refiners like to leave their own mark on their work, but this is just a mark and has no other use. Also, you should have signed the Tianji contract, so with Tianji in place, those people wouldn't dare to do anything. But this mark should be left by Master Yu. Master Yu? You know him? I don't know him. I've only heard of him. He's a very capable blacksmith. The spirit weapons that come from his hands are all of the best quality. However, up until now, no one knows his identity or which camp he's from. Why is he hiding his head and showing his tail like this? Shui Yuan said, probably because he doesn't want to be famous, so as to prevent people from begging him to refine weapons. The cultivation world of the 9 continents is so big, there's bound to be some capable people. Many capable people like to be quiet, so this Master Yu has always been in the Tianji treasury to accept all kinds of requests. With the protection of Tianji, he doesn't have to worry about his identity being exposed. Lu Yi thought that Master Yu's identity was already exposed, but he still didn't know who that woman was. Shui Yuan returned the mountain saber and asked, "How does it feel to reach the Cloud River realm?" "I'm still not used to it." "It's normal. A sudden increase in strength requires some time to consolidate. It'll be fine in a few days." After chatting for a while, Lu Yi said, "I'll go take a look at Madame Yun. Madame Yun told me to find her after reaching the Cloud River realm." "Go." Spiritual power surged, and Lu Yi soared into the sky. This time, he didn't use flying equipment, nor did he activate the flight spirit mark. After cultivators reached the Cloud River realm, they would be able to fly. However, Lu Yi had just reached the Cloud River realm, and it was his first time flying directly with his physical body. It was inevitable that he wasn't very familiar with flying. His body swayed left and right in the air, and it was difficult for him to grasp the direction. He clearly wanted to fly toward Madame Yun's Bright Heart Peak, but as he flew, he deviated from the direction. Moreover, compared to flying with flying equipment, directly flying with one's physical body consumed a lot more spiritual power. Therefore, even if cultivators reached the Cloud River realm, they still needed to use a flying equipment. When traveling a long distance, using a flying equipment consumed a lot less spiritual power than flying with one's physical body. In terms of speed, flying with flying equipment was also faster. He still needed to practice more. Lu Yi suddenly realized that after reaching the Cloud River realm, there were still many things that he needed to do. After finally reaching Bright Heart Peak, Lu Yi directly walked into Madame Yun's bedroom. Under the guidance of the maid, he came to a room and saw Madame Yun, who was reading. "Greetings, Madame Yun." Lu Yi bowed. "You've reached the Cloud River realm?" Madame Yun sized him up. "Yes. Your cultivation speed is not bad." Madame Yun nodded slightly. She put down the book in her hand and stood up. "Follow me." She walked out of the room, and Lu Yi followed closely behind. As they walked, Madame Yun said, "The Tao of spirit patterns is broad and profound. For those who are not battle pattern masters, spirit patterns can often be used as an external force. For example, tattooing one's body. You should have met such an opponent in the spirit stream battlefield." A guy covered in tattoos immediately appeared in Lu Ye's mind. That was an opponent he had met when he was fighting for the rankings. When he first saw that person covered in tattoos, Lu Yi was vigilant for a while. In the end, it turned out that only one of the tattoos on that person's body was a real tattoo. The rest were all just decorations. I did. Tattoos are divided into recessive and dominant types, as well as temporary and permanent ones. Generally speaking, cultivators below the Cloud River realm can only bear temporary tattoos. However, after reaching the Cloud River realm, their bodies can bear a permanent tattoo. Therefore, it is very likely that you will meet some opponents in the future. They are not spirit pattern masters, but they can still unleash the power of spirit patterns, and that is tattoos. Those tattoos are their hidden trump cards. You must be careful and never underestimate any opponent. This disciple will remember. I called you here this time to tattoo a permanent tattoo. What kind of tattoo do you want? Chapter 440. Not every Cloud River Realm cultivator had tattoos on their bodies, because there were not many inscription masters who could inscribe spirit tattoos on cultivators in the entire 9 provinces. This required extremely high attainments in the Tao of spirit tattoos and extremely exquisite inscription techniques. Moreover, even if such an inscription master was willing to help, the materials needed were also of high value. Inscriptions were based on spirit runes, and there were many types of them. There were offensive ones, defensive ones, auxiliary ones. To Lu Yi, he did not need offensive and defensive spirit tattoos because he had sharpness and defense. He did not need auxiliary spirit tattoos either. He could activate many auxiliary spirit tattoos himself. However, there was a kind of auxiliary spirit tattoo that he had coveted for a long time. Therefore, when he heard Madame Yun say this, he replied without thinking, Void. He had learned the Void spirit tattoo from books and did not have it on the talent tree. It had not reached the level where a spirit tattoo would be born with a thought. His greatest use for the Void spirit tattoo was to set up a teleportation array. Moreover, the teleportation distance was limited, and the experience was not good. However, the use of the Void spirit tattoo was not just to set up a teleportation array. It also had many wonderful uses. For example, using the Void spirit tattoo as the core to refine some special spirit weapons, which would have the function of storage, such as storage rings, storage bracelets, and so on. The most common storage item used by cultivators was the storage bag. The storage bag was sewn from a special kind of beast skin. That kind of special demonic beast could be reared by humans. Therefore, in the cultivation world, the value of the storage bag was not high. Basically, every cultivator had one or two. The storage bag was. The storage space was very limited. Compared to storage rings, storage bracelets, or other storage spirit artifacts, the storage spirit artifacts were much more powerful. There was no comparison at all. However, the value of storage rings and storage bracelets was very high. Lu Yi had only seen a storage ring on his sect leader's hand. Even senior sister Shui Yuan did not have this thing. It could be seen that it was rare. However, Shui Yuan did not have a storage bag on her. Lu Yi had been curious about this. He did not know what method his second senior sister used to store things. After asking her about this, Lu Yi understood that storage methods were not only limited to storage bags and storage rings. He could also use spirit tattoos. With the Void spirit tattoo as the core, by tattooing on a cultivator's body, a storage space could be formed, so there was no need to carry a storage pouch. The biggest advantage of this storage method was that the items in the storage space could be taken out immediately with just a thought. It wasn't like a storage pouch, where one had to reach into it to grab it. Moreover, the storage space of these tattoos was much larger than that of a storage pouch. Lu Yi didn't want to end up with dozens of storage bags hanging on his body like last time. Hearing Lu Ye's words, Madame Yun nods, "You are a spiritual tattooist. The Void is a good choice. Let's go with the Void then." He walked into the small room that he had entered the first time he was tattooing and followed Madame Yun's instructions. Lu Yi sat to the side. Then, he stretched out his right hand. The back of his hand was exposed. Madame Yun also took a seat at the side. Following that, she took out needles of different lengths and thicknesses. He then took out a bottle of amber-colored beast blood. The Tao of inscriptions is actually quite interesting. In the future, when your attainments in spirit runes meet the requirements, you will be able to do so. I can teach you if you want to learn. With such a skill, you will no longer lack resources for your cultivation in the future. You will be sought after wherever you go. Madame Yun opened the bottle of beast blood as she spoke. She took out a needle, dipped it in the beast blood, and stabbed it into the back of Lu Ye's hand. A stinging pain like a bee stab came. Every time a needle was inserted, Madame Yun had to re-dip it in the beast blood. Lu Yi did not know what kind of demonic beast this beast blood came from, but the last time he obtained the flying wing tattoo here, he also used beast blood. From the looks of it, the Tao of inscriptions required some special materials. This kind of beast blood that could inscribe void tattoos was definitely expensive. Madame Yun's movements were sometimes fast and sometimes slow. When she was fast, her hands danced and left after images. A dense stinging pain constantly came from the back of Lu Ye's hand. When she was slow, her movements were meticulous. Lu Yi quietly felt it. Time passed. When he was on Bright Heart Peak, Madame Yun had planted void tattoos, and the spirit stream battlefield was once again in turmoil. After Lu Yi, one of the 3 disasters of the spirit stream, advanced to Cloud River and his name disappeared from the spirit stream list. In less than half a day, the name of a Jade Blood sect disciple appeared on the spirit stream list. Hua Ci. Tianjiu's cultivation base. To the cultivators of the spirit stream battlefield, this name was undoubtedly very unfamiliar. Because before this, very few people had heard of her. The main reason why she had received so much attention was because she came from the Jade Blood sect, the same sect as Lu Yi. But soon, more people's attention was drawn to her. This was because there were rumors that this woman was a medical cultivator. There were very few medical cultivators on the spirit stream list. Basically, they were all ranked below the 50th rank. Because medical cultivators were not very strong, even if they cultivated other schools, they would not be able to reach a high rank. If that was all, it would not be a big deal. The key point was that this woman's method of fighting was exactly the same as Lu Yi's. She had started from the bottom of the spirit stream list. None of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators ranked above her had escaped, and she had challenged them one by one. As a result, the myriad Devil Ridge was furious. All of the spirit stream list cultivators she had challenged had died. The scene from 4 months ago had appeared once again. 4 months ago, Lu Yi had slaughtered all of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators on the list. This had led to a large increase in the number of cultivators from the Grand Sky Alliance on the Spirit Stream list. 4 months later, the same thing had happened again. History was so similar. And both times, it had been the Jade Blood sect disciples. She was just a medical cultivator. Who gave her the guts to do that? What ability did she have to act so unscrupulously? For a moment, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators ranked above Hua Ci were filled with righteous indignation. They could not defeat that bastard Lu Yi, but could they not defeat a medical cultivator? No matter what, they could not allow this woman called Hua Ci to act so presumptuously. Otherwise, the myriad Devil Ridge would lose all face. However, a scene that frightened them appeared. The woman called Hua Ci's ranking rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. The names of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators disappeared one by one. So far, no one had figured out how this woman had killed so many people. Lu Yi had brought a pet beast with him. That pet beast's roar had the effect of intimidating people's minds, so his opponents could not even admit defeat. What method did Hua Ci have to make those myriad Devil Ridge cultivators unable to utter a single word? What kind of immortal sect was the Jade Blood sect? Monstrous figures were emerging one after another. On Bright Heart Peak, Madame Yun had already left. Even a spirit tattooist like her seemed a little tired after giving Lu Yi a void tattoo. After all, void spirit tattoos were much more complicated than ordinary spirit tattoos. In the end, the bottle of unknown beast blood had been used up. In the room, Lu Yi's mind was immersed. He could clearly feel the storage space on the back of his hand. This storage space, which was built with void spirit tattoos as the core, was much larger than a storage bag. It was estimated to be more than 20 times the size of a storage bag. Now, there was no need to worry about not being able to store anything. Lu Yi could even put the Pan Mountain Saber directly inside. Previously, he had always held the Pan Mountain saber in his hand. If he kept it in his storage bag, he would have to take it out if he encountered an enemy. Not only would it be inconvenient, but he might also miss some opportunities to kill the enemy. Now, there was no need to worry about this. The storage space was on the back of his hand. With a thought, everything inside could be easily taken out. However, to Lu Yi, having the Pan Mountain saber in his hand was already a habit. As the saying went, with a saber in hand, there was no need to panic. Walking out of the room, he was led out by the maid. He did not see Madame Yun again. When he was outside, Lu Yi activated his spirit power and soared into the sky. He had just advanced to the Cloud River realm and had to familiarize himself with many things. Lu Yi decided to start with flying, which was also the simplest thing. For other cultivators, this might take a few days to familiarize themselves with it. Moreover, they would have to be careful when trying to avoid falling from the sky. However, Lu Yi did not have such concerns. Although he had never flown before, he had activated the flying wing spirit tattoos more than once. Therefore, he had some experience in flying. 2 hours later, he could already fly stably in the air. Another 2 hours later, he could also perform all kinds of nimble movements while flying. Lu Yi only returned to Shojin Peak in the evening. After having a good meal at second senior sister's place, Shui Yuan said, "Little junior brother, it's time for you to choose your own spirit peak." Lu Yi did not understand. Shui Yuan explained, Ao Mountain has hundreds of spirit peaks. In its heyday, every spirit peak was filled with disciples. After 30 years of decline, only the old man and I are left to guard Shojin Peak. This is because this is the core spirit peak of our sect. After so many years, only Madame Yun has occupied Bright Heart Peak. Now that you have advanced to the Cloud River realm, you can have your own spirit peak. Now that the sect is developing well, there should be more and more people advancing to the Cloud River realm in the future. You can't all stay on Shojin Peak. It's not that I want to chase you away, but in this generation, you are the 5th senior brother in name, but in reality, you are the eldest senior brother. Other than giant armor, you are the second to advance to the Cloud River realm. You have to set an example for the other disciples. Lu Yi nodded, I understand. I'll go look for it later. Shui Yuan picked up some food for him with her chopsticks. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi walked out of the room and soared into the sky. During the day, when he was flying in the air, he circled around Ao Mountain many times. He saw the remnants of the desolate buildings on the spirit peaks. He could vaguely see the scenery of Jade Blood Sect's heyday. Right now, on Ao Mountain, other than Shojin Peak, only Bright Heart Peak was occupied by Madame Yun. He could choose any of the other spirit peaks. Which one do you like? Lu Yi asked. Floated beside him. She looked around and pointed. This one. Then I'll take it. Lu Yi did not have any special requirements. It was fine as long as it was habitable. Chapter 441. The spirit peak that Yi chose had a large bamboo forest halfway up the mountain, spreading all the way to the peak. The entire spirit peak was filled with red flowers and green willows, and the scenery was beautiful. The peak was called Green Bamboo Peak, but because no one had lived here for decades, the buildings here were all dilapidated. Lu Yi descended and walked among the broken fences and walls. He could vaguely feel the hustle and bustle of the sect in the past. This spirit peak was very large, and there were many buildings on it. However, it was not suitable for people to live in for the time being. After confirming that he had chosen this spirit peak, Lu Yi brought Yi back to the Guardian Peak and found second senior sister, asking her to help issue a mission to rebuild Green Bamboo Peak for the disciples in the encampment. Now, there were hundreds of disciples in the Jade Blood Sect encampment. They basically had nothing else to do except cultivate. This kind of mission issued by the sect could let them earn some merit points. He believed that those disciples would be happy to help. Regarding this, second senior sister did not have any objections. The merit points in the Jade Blood sect encampment could be said to be earned by Lu Yi alone. Helping him rebuild a spirit peak, spending some sect merit points was naturally not a problem. By the way, little junior brother, you are now in the Cloud River realm. The spirit stones and Yun spirit pills that you used before are no longer suitable for your current realm. Go to the treasury and get a new batch. As Shui Yuan said this, she handed the key to the treasury to Lu Yi. Although it was called a key, it was actually a jade pendant to open the restriction. The treasury of the Jade Blood sect now stored tens of millions of merit points, and there were all kinds of things. The restriction of the treasury was personally set up by second senior sister with the help of Madame Yun. Without this jade pendant, anyone who trespassed would be severely injured even if they did not die. Even if Shui Yuan did not say this, Lu Yi was ready to ask her for it. The spirit stones used in the spirit stream realm were all low-grade spirit stones, and Yun's spirit pills were only the most basic spirit pills. When one's cultivation reached the Cloud River realm, using these things could no longer keep up with the pace of cultivation. Not to mention the spirit stones, when Lu Yi was in the 8th heaven, he had to eat dozens of Yun's spirit pills a day, and he was almost crippled. Above Yun's spirit pills, there were better spirit pills that were more suitable for Cloud River realm cultivators. If he took these better spirit pills, he would not need to eat so much in a day. Holding the jade slit ring in his hand, Lu Yi arrived at the treasury with ease. He shook the jade slit ring in his hand, and the door to the treasury that was built against the mountain wall opened with a bang. Lu Yi stepped inside. Although the huge treasury wasn't filled to the brim, it was still extremely plentiful. These were the safety coins of the various sects of the Myriad Demons Ridge. Now, they were all piled up in the Jade Blood sect's treasury. All kinds of treasures were placed in different places. Lu Yexian took out his unused spirit stones and spirit dawn and placed them in a suitable place. Then, he took out a few thousand medium-grade spirit stones and put them into his storage space. He didn't need to take out too many. Since the day he started cultivating, all his cultivation resources were obtained by killing enemies. Generally speaking, the resources he obtained from killing enemies were much more than what he used for cultivation. Although he now had a storage space constructed by void tattoos, he still habitually hung a storage bag around his waist. However, there was nothing good in it, only some food. The reason why he did this was mainly to deceive others. Otherwise, if a cultivator didn't even have a storage bag on him, anyone would know that he had a void tattooed, and it would inevitably attract attention. There was also a storage bag around Hu Po's neck, which was shared by Yi and Hu Pa. After all, Yi was a spirit body, and it wasn't convenient for her to carry it around, so she hung it around Hu Po's neck. Taking down the storage bag, he also put a few hundred medium-grade spirit stones in it. Lu Yi then walked to the Spirit Dawn area. The Spirit Dawn that Spirit Stream tier cultivators took were Spirit Accumulation pills, while Cloud River tier cultivators took Spirit Origin pills. Comparatively speaking, the medicinal effects of the latter were stronger, and Spirit Stream tier cultivators couldn't bear it. Lu Yi took out a bottle of Spirit Origin pills, poured out a pill, and threw it into his mouth to chew. He raised his eyebrows. The taste was unexpectedly good. He was moved. Finally, he didn't have to take Spirit Accumulation pills anymore. This was probably the most comfortable thing that had happened to him after he advanced to the Cloud River tier. Hoopa watched from the side, and Lu Yi casually fed it a pill, then observed its reaction. There was no reaction. After Hoopa finished eating, it looked at Lu Yi with an expression that said, "I want more." He didn't have to worry about whether Hoopa could bear it or not. It was a demonic beast, and even ate spirit stones, so eating some spirit origin pills naturally wouldn't be a problem. The medicinal effects of spirit origin pills were indeed much stronger than spirit accumulation pills. When the pill entered his stomach, Lu Yi quickly felt a warm current surging in his abdomen, which then turned into his own spirit power and poured into the long river of spirit power, increasing the volume of the long river. Roughly speaking, the medicinal effects of one spirit origin pill were about equivalent to more than 10 spirit accumulation pills, but in terms of price, the difference was more than 10 times. Putting some spirit origin pills into his own space of tattoos and Hupo's storage bag, Lu Yi looked around the treasure trove again. Seeing that there was nothing that he needed, he left. Returning the jade slit ring to Shui Yuan, he returned to his room. He wasn't in a hurry to cultivate, but took out the breath fruit's core. He had just advanced to the Cloud River tier, so naturally, he had to familiarize himself with the various methods of the Cloud River tier, and using the breath fruit's core to enter the Mirage Realm to fight was the best method. Since the last time he met a guy from the Thousands Devil Ridge inside and killed him several times, he hadn't used the breath fruit's core to enter the Mirage Realm for a long time. It wasn't that he was afraid of meeting him again, but these days, he was either engrossed in cultivation or fighting with the Thousands Devil Ridge, so he had no time to spare. Suddenly, he remembered the scene of the Thousands Devil Ridge powerhouse he met before entering the Mirage Realm. It was the same as the encounter when he entrusted the spiritual weapon to upgrade in the Tianji treasure trove. Both sides were wrapped in a cloud of mist, and he couldn't see the other person's appearance at all. Now that he was blessed by Tianji, he could see through the mist and see the other person's appearance directly. If he met him again, he must remember the person's appearance and get it back with interest sooner or later. Thinking of this, he was looking forward to meeting that person. At least he could figure out the other person's identity. Pouring his spirit power into the breath fruit's core, Lu Ye's figure appeared in the small room. There was nothing else in the room except a door. Every time he opened this door, he entered the Mirage Realm. Stepping forward to push the door, a line of words appeared on the door. Lu Yi fixed his eyes on it and was stunned. The price had increased. When he was in the Spirit Stream stage, each time he entered the Mirage Realm to train himself, it only cost 50 merit points, but when he reached the Cloud River stage, it actually cost 100 merit points each time, which directly doubled. He didn't know how much it would cost when he reached the True Lake stage. Lu Yi had a total of 97,950 merit points left, so a mere 100 merit points wasn't a big deal to him. After pushing the door and entering, he looked back. Just like before, there was nothing behind him. The door he came in from and the small room he entered from were gone. It was as if after passing through the door, he directly entered another environment. What he saw now was different from when he was in the Spirit Stream stage. When he was in the Spirit Stream stage, he could only see clearly within a radius of a few hundred feet. Beyond that, it was all wrapped in thick mist, and he couldn't see clearly. The figures of the insect race and cultivators all rushed out of the mist and often caught Lu Yi off guard. Now that his cultivation had reached the Cloud River stage, there was no mist within a radius of 1,000 feet. Only 1,000 feet was covered by mist. Just as he steadied himself, the fog in front of him started to churn. In the next moment, a huge insect the size of a human rushed out of the fog. That insect looked like a praying mantis. Its carapace was black, and it looked very sturdy. It waved two mantis blades that flashed with cold light. The 1,000 feet distance between them was quickly closed. Unsheathing the mountain coiling saber, Lu Yi took the initiative to meet the insect race. According to the rules of the Mirage Realm, Lu Yi was now in the First Order Cloud River Realm, so the insect race that appeared should be of the same level. However, Lu Ye's strength was not comparable to an ordinary First Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. He had already reached the limit of the Spirit Stream realm, and was the first human cultivator to reach the level of an overlord. This was something that even Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan couldn't achieve. It could be said that Lu Ye's Spirit Stream stage was without any exaggeration. With such a solid foundation, the Cloud River realm naturally had combat power that ordinary Cloud River realm cultivators didn't have. After just a few breaths, the arrogant praying mantis fell into a pool of blood. Compared to the strength he could display in the spirit stream stage, the improvement after reaching the Cloud River realm was too great. A breakthrough of a great realm could definitely bring earth-shaking changes to a cultivator. Not only did his strength have such a change, but the mountain-coiling saber had also been upgraded. This saber that corresponded to his saber could now display a stronger killing power. The mist tumbled, and the two praying mantises rushed out, one on the left and one on the right. Lu Yi raised his saber and slashed. After more than half an hour, Lu Yi opened his eyes. There was a slight tingling in his mind, but it was gone. Now, his spiritual energy was no longer comparable to before, and the after-effects of dying in the Mirage realm had been greatly reduced. Feeling that he could still fight with his spiritual energy, Lu Yi once again urged his spiritual energy into the breath fruit core and entered the Mirage realm. More than half an hour later, he opened his eyes with a pale face. His mind wasn't exhausted, but his spiritual energy was almost depleted. He didn't enter the Mirage realm again. Instead, he took out an origin spirit pill and swallowed it. Then, he took out a saber technique cultivation experience to study. The 360 apertures in his body had formed a great heavenly cycle. At this level, a cultivator's cultivation was no longer limited by the cultivation method. In other words, as long as it was a cultivation method that he had come into contact with, he could use it anytime and anywhere, and it wouldn't interfere with the great heavenly cycle. Therefore, Lu Yi didn't need to change his cultivation method at this moment to activate the gluttonous feast. His stomach was buzzing, and his whole stomach was like a millstone, grinding the spirit pills he took and quickly replenishing his consumed spiritual energy. Time passed. Every time the spiritual energy in his body was full, Lu Yi would enter the Mirage realm to hone himself and familiarize himself with the improvement of the new realm. When he rested, he would study the saber technique cultivation experience and learn useful things from it. With the combination of the two, Lu Yi improved rapidly, and his saber technique obviously improved. Chapter 442. Lu Yi was tempering himself in the Mirage realm, while the undercurrent in the spirit stream battlefield was turbulent. All of the myriad demon ridge cultivators were looking for one person, Jade Blood Sect's Hua Ci. Previously, this cultivator from the Jade Blood Sect had attempted to challenge the spirit stream list. In just one day, she had reached the 70th rank, and all of the myriad demon ridge cultivators she had challenged had been killed without exception. This made the myriad demon ridge furious. First, there was Lu Yi, and now there was Hua Ci. The same way of challenging the list, the same way of killing people. There was no end to the Jade Blood Sect. Lu Yi was powerful and had a solid foundation. After reaching the 9th heaven, he was invincible in the spirit stream battlefield. The myriad demon ridge could not do anything to him. Finally, he had reached the 9th heaven and left the spirit stream battlefield. They thought that the mountain that had been pressing down on them was gone, but who would have thought that Hua Ci would appear? This woman was just a medical cultivator. Medical cultivators should be practicing medicine to help the world, saving the dying and healing the injured. Why would she come to the spirit stream list? All of the resentment they had for Lu Yi was now transferred to Hua Ci. The myriad demon ridge wanted to find this woman to prevent future trouble. There was no other way. The myriad demon ridge cultivators on the spirit stream battlefield were terrified when they saw the name Jade Blood Sect. They would not allow another disciple of the Jade Blood Sect to appear on the spirit stream list. However, even if all the forces of the myriad demon ridge worked together, they could not find any information about Hua Ci. This medical cultivator seemed to be on the spirit stream battlefield, but she also seemed to be not. She had not appeared in any of the encampments. On the second day, Hua Ci's name had reached the 50th rank. Compared to Lu Yi, the speed at which she ascended the rankings wasn't as fast. But at this moment, her ranking was already the highest ever achieved by a medical cultivator. Most people felt that she should stop there. However, on the third day, her ranking continued to climb in an orderly manner. The myriad Demon Ridge cultivators ranked above her disappeared one by one. On the fourth day, Hua Xi's name had reached the top 10. The Spirit Stream battlefield was in an uproar. No medical cultivator had ever occupied such a high ranking. The Jade Blood Sect's Hua Xi had created a historical precedent. Tens of thousands of medical cultivators felt proud. Only now did they realize that they could fight so well. Encouraged by Hua Xi, many medical cultivators tried to challenge the Spirit Stream list. However, without exception, they had all been taught a lesson. Strictly speaking, with the exception of a few rare occasions, the difference in strength between the top 10 of the spiritual stream list was not that great. Hua Xi was now ranked 10th. Moreover, looking at her speed and battle record, she already had the qualifications to reach the top. Lan Zi, who was also a woman, was at the top of the spirit stream ranking. Countless gazes were focused on the spiritual stream list. They all wanted to know which of the two women was stronger. However, just as everyone was waiting for the battle to start, Lan Zi's name suddenly disappeared from the top of the list. Soon, news came. Lan Zi had broken through to Cloud River tier. Advancing to the Cloud River at this time seemed like Lan Zi was deliberately avoiding the battle. For a moment, rumors began to spread. Many cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge felt humiliated. Regarding this, Boundless Island did not make any announcement, which further confirmed the rumor that Lan Zi was avoiding the battle. It was only at this moment that the cultivators on the Spirit Stream battlefield realized what kind of killing methods Hua Xi, a medical cultivator, had. All the cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge whom she had previously challenged were all dead. Either he refused or die in battle. Therefore, no one knew how Hua Xi, a medical cultivator, killed her enemies. That was until the battle after she entered the top 10. According to the expert from the Myriad Demons Ridge, whose life was hanging by a thread after the battle, although Hua Xi of the Jade Blood Sect was a medical cultivator, she was a poison doctor. When the battle began, the woman directly threw a green poisonous pill at him. Immediately after, the poisonous pill exploded, and the entire battlefield was filled with poisonous fog. The poisonous fog was very poisonous, and the person was poisoned to the ground before he could rush to Hua Xi's side. If he had not shouted in time to admit defeat, he would have died in the battlefield. Even so, the residual poison in his body was difficult to remove. He could only hurry back to his sect and ask the medical cultivators in the sect to treat him. A poison doctor. This was the identity of the Jade Blood Sect's Hua Xi. The world was in an uproar. Many medical cultivators were good at using poison, but to be able to rely on such methods to reach the top 10 of the Spirit Stream list and even defeat a cultivator in the top 10. It had never happened before. After this battle, Hua Xi's ranking rose steadily. The cultivators who challenged her after that were all rejected without exception. This was because even these cultivators in the top 10 were not confident that they could escape unscathed from Hua Xi's poison. Once infected with that kind of poison, even if they did not die, a lot of time would be wasted. It was better to give up the battle. At most, their ranking on the Spirit Stream list would fall by 1 place. Therefore, 5 days after Lu Yi advanced to the Cloud River realm, Hua Xi of the Jade Blood Sect quickly reached the top of the Spirit Stream list. Moreover, as a medical cultivator, this had never happened before. The whole world was shocked. Previously, the world only knew that the Jade Blood Sect had Lu Yi, but at this time, the name of the Jade Blood Sect's Hua Xi quickly spread and was worshipped by countless medical cultivators. Even the medical cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge were not exempt from this. The only thing that made the Myriad Demons Ridge happy was that Hua Xi was not as troublesome as Lu Yi. In fact, until today, the Myriad Demons Ridge did not know where Hua Xi was. Not to mention the Myriad Demons Ridge, even the Grand Heaven Alliance did not know. Hua Xi seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. She was nowhere to be found in any of the encampments in the core circle. In the room of the Jade Blood sect's main sect, Lu Yi was studying the saber cultivation experience in his hand while urging the talent tree to devour the earth core fire. At the same time, he also swallowed spirit pills to recover his consumed spirit power. These days, he had been constantly tempering himself in the Mirage realm, and Lu Yi was completely familiar with his skyrocketing strength. Compared to the strength he could display when he was 9 days old, the increase now was too great. No wonder people said that the increase of a big realm was a qualitative leap. In these 5 days, his cultivation did not increase because he had been consuming his spirit power. Previously, he had bought 100 earth core fire from the Tianji treasure house, which cost him 20,000 merit points. After continuously devouring it for a few days, there was not much left. After devouring the last earth core fire, Lu Yi put down the saber cultivation experience in his hand and checked the changes in the talent tree. At first glance, Lu Yi frowned. According to his estimation, 100 earth core fire should be able to light up 50 to 60 leaves. But in fact, the number of leaves lit up was less than half of what he had expected. Lu Yi checked them one by one again and only obtained 4 kinds of spirit inscriptions. The remaining leaves all carried some special techniques for constructing spirit inscriptions. Although these things were not spirit inscriptions, they were extremely important to Lu Yi. The more techniques he obtained, the easier it would be to construct spirit inscriptions. Take setting up a teleportation array as an example. If he did not have the previous accumulation, even if he learned the void spirit inscriptions from the book, he would not be able to construct it with his own attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions, let alone setting up a teleportation array. It was because he had mastered those techniques that he could successfully construct the void spirit inscriptions and then make the teleportation array work. The 4 spirit inscriptions he obtained this time were not suitable for battle. They were Leaf Dance, Flame, Water Arrow, and Earth Spike. If they were constructed alone, they could form a spell. This time, he was going further and further on the path of a spell cultivator. Although the number of leaves lit up was much less than expected, Lu Yi did not feel that it was a waste. This was because the talent tree needed fuel. During the days when the primordial magnetic field covered the spirit stream battlefield, he had been hiding in the myriad poison forest. If not for the talent tree devouring enough earth core fire and storing a large amount of fuel, how could he be immune to poison? Therefore, even if he did not light up a single leaf, as long as the earth core fire was devoured by the talent tree, it would not be wasted. The origin spirit pill he consumed now was more than 10 times more effective than the spirit accumulation pill. The origin spirit pill also contained more pill poison. Burning the pill poison would consume the fuel stored in the talent tree. He did not buy the earth core fire again, although he still had more than 70,000 merit points. Some things did not need to be rushed. Moreover, if the information he received was correct, merit points were very useful in the Cloud River battlefield. 5 days after advancing to the Cloud River battlefield, Lu Yi walked out of the cultivation ground. There were disciples coming and going in the sect continuously. They had all accepted the mission to help Lu Yi rebuild the green bamboo peak. When they saw him, they all bowed respectfully. Lu Yi soared into the sky. Moments later, he flew above the green bamboo peak. He looked down and saw a large number of disciples bustling about. The originally dilapidated buildings had disappeared and were replaced by brand new houses. At the top of the green bamboo peak, there was a huge hall being built. It looked quite big. They were all cultivators. Their efficiency was very high. Moreover, there were a group of about 100 cultivators here. In less than half a month, the green bamboo peak would be rebuilt. However, Lu Yi could not wait for that day. It was a pity. Fortunately, he would eventually return. He returned to the main guard peak to find his second senior sister. "You want to enter the Cloud River battlefield?" Shui Yuan seemed to have sensed his intentions. "Yes. Now that my cultivation level has stabilized, it is time to go in and cultivate." All right. Shui Yuan nodded. Did you bring enough cultivation resources? If not, bring more. I brought a lot. The Cloud River battlefield is different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. I have told you some things before. However, there are many things that are hard to explain. After you enter, remember to buy some basic information about the Cloud River battlefield from the Tianji Business Alliance. Also, buy a map of the Cloud River battlefield. This is very important. I will remember. The Spirit Stream battlefield is usually a battle between cultivators of the two camps. The Cloud River battlefield does not lack such battles. However, in comparison, the Cloud River battlefield is more about fighting for cultivation resources. As long as you are strong enough, your cultivation speed will be faster than others. You have just advanced to the Cloud River battlefield. Remember to play it safe. If you encounter an enemy that you cannot defeat, you must protect yourself. Only by living can you have a future. Also, after you enter, you can contact your fourth senior brother. Yes. Like an elder looking at a wanderer who was about to leave, Shui Yuan constantly reminded Lu Yi of various things. After a long time, Lu Yi bid farewell to Shui Yuan. He brought along Hupa and Yi and strode towards the Tianji Hall. Cloud River battlefield, I am coming. Chapter 443. In the Tianji Hall, Lu Yi placed his hand on the Tianji pillar and connected his mind to it. When he was in the Spirit Stream stage, he could only enter the Spirit Stream battlefield by connecting his mind to the Tianji pillar. But now, he was in the Cloud River stage, so he had another choice. He could enter the Spirit Stream battlefield, but he had to pay 3,000 merit points. And after entering the Spirit Stream battlefield, his strength would be suppressed to the level of Tianjiu, returning to his previous state. A Cloud River tier cultivator would have to pay 3,000 merit points to forcefully enter the Spirit Stream battlefield. If it was a true Lake tier cultivator, the required merit points would be even higher. The higher one's cultivation level, the higher the price. Thus, high-level cultivators wouldn't forcefully enter a battlefield that didn't belong to them. Of course, he would not enter the Spirit Stream battlefield. He had to enter the Cloud River battlefield now. After making his choice, he did not enter immediately. Because the Cloud River battlefield was not like the Spirit Stream battlefield, the sects did not have encampments there. Thus, there were several ways to enter the Cloud River battlefield. The first was to appear at a random location in the Cloud River battlefield. If you were lucky, you would be safe. If you were unlucky, you would appear at a place where many enemies gathered or in the territory of powerful demonic beasts. Then, a battle would break out. If you were not strong enough, you could be killed. The second was to teleport. There were spiritual lands in the Cloud River battlefield. The spiritual lands were rich in spiritual energy, and most of the spiritual lands had Tianji pillars. If a cultivator could leave a mark on the Tianji pillar in the spiritual land, they could be directly teleported to the spiritual land. This method of teleportation was suitable for cultivators with spiritual lands. Lu Yi had never entered the Cloud River battlefield, so he naturally did not have any spiritual lands. Only the third method was suitable for him. This was also a method of teleportation, but there were many locations to choose from. The sects did not have encampments in the Cloud River battlefield, but there were many Tianji business unions. These Tianji business unions were scattered all over the Cloud River battlefield, providing cultivators with supplies and places to rest. Each Tianji business union had its own Tianji pillar. No matter which camp the cultivators were from, they could use these Tianji pillars to enter and exit the Cloud River battlefield. It could be said that the Cloud River battlefield was the most chaotic place around the Tianji business unions. In the Tianji Hall, Lu Yi closed his eyes. His mind was connected to the Tianji pillar. Light dots appeared in his mind. Each light dot represented a Tianji business union. He could choose any one of them and use the Tianji pillar to teleport to that Tianji business union. How to choose was a problem. Shui Yuan told him to look for fourth senior brother Li Baxian after he entered the Cloudy River battlefield. However, Lu Yi wanted to find giant armor first. This big guy had a slow personality and had entered the Cloudy River battlefield a few months earlier than him. He did not know where he was now, nor did he know if he had suffered any losses. There were over 1,000 dots of light that appeared in his mind. One could imagine how vast the Cloudy River battlefield was. Compared to the Spirit Stream battlefield, the Cloud River battlefield was several times larger. After all, once a cultivator reached the Cloud River tier, they would be able to fly. If the battlefield was too small, the cultivators from the 9 states wouldn't be able to display their full power. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi chose a light spot in the middle. This way, no matter where giant armor was, he would not be too far away from it. Hoopa, are you ready? Lu Yi asked softly. Hoopa, who was crouching on his shoulder, whimpered in response. Lu Yi smiled, and with a thought, he felt a slight sense of weightlessness in the next instant. This feeling came quickly and left quickly. When he opened his eyes again, he had already appeared in a large hall. Not far from him, a cultivator opened his eyes at the same time. Obviously, he had also just been transported over from the 9 states. He had made the same choice as Lu Yi, and had come to the Tianji Business Alliance. However, they had no intention of communicating with each other. Lu Yi raised his hand again and pressed it against the Tianji pillar, trying to be transported back to the 9 states. In the end, the Tianji pillar replied that a large amount of merit points would be deducted from him. He immediately understood that the information he had heard before was correct. Cultivators who entered the Cloudy River battlefield could not leave the Cloudy River battlefield at will within a month unless they paid enough merit points. Although this was his first time entering the Cloudy River battlefield, he had more or less obtained some information about it through various channels. It was just that it was not systematic and comprehensive. Lu Yi did not know why there was such a rule. He only guessed that the Tianji pillar's teleportation had a cost. In order to prevent bored cultivators from constantly entering and leaving the 9 states and the Cloudy River battlefield, such a restriction was put in place. The cultivator who had appeared with him had already turned and left. Lu Yi did not stay for long either. He followed closely behind that person and walked out of the hall. A noisy atmosphere rushed towards him. This was the Tianji Business Alliance, so naturally, there would be a large number of cultivators coming and going. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the battlefield imprint. He tried to contact fourth senior brother. He was prepared to greet him and tell him that he had come to the Cloudy River battlefield. However, to his surprise, the message did not get out. Fourth senior brother's imprint did not disappear. This meant that he was safe. If the message could not get out, then there was only one possibility. Fourth senior brother was not in the same world as him. He then tried to contact Feng Yuechan. The situation was the same. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan had always been inseparable. If one of them could not be contacted, then the other definitely could not be contacted. Lu Yi sent a message to Giant Armor. This time, the message got out. Giant Armor quickly replied. The two of them conversed for a while, and Lu Yi frowned. This was because Giant Armor did not know where he was, and Lu Yi did not know where he was either. He could only tell Giant Armor to find a heavenly secret business alliance and buy a 10-point map before ending their conversation. After finding a manager of the business alliance, Lu Yi spent some spirit stones to buy the 10 points map and all kinds of basic information about the Cloudy River battlefield. What shocked Lu Yi was that the manager of the business alliance was only at the Spirit Stream realm. Perhaps only the Tianji Business Alliance could have a Spirit Stream realm cultivator appear in the Cloudy River battlefield. This made Lu Yi feel that the Tianji Business Alliance was not simple. Sitting in the room, Lu Yi checked the 10 points map. After confirming his current location, he checked the information again. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi put down the jade slip in his hand and digested the information he had obtained. Compared to the Spirit Stream battlefield, the situation in the Cloudy River battlefield was undoubtedly much more complicated. The competition was also much greater. Here, the cultivators did not only compete with people from opposing factions. There were also cultivators from the same faction. However, as long as one had enough strength, one's cultivation could rise very quickly here. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, each sect had their own base. The density of the heaven and earth spirit chi in the base was closely related to the blessings they bought. The more blessings they bought, the denser the heaven and earth spirit chi, and the faster the disciples' cultivation progress. However, there were no bases in the Cloudy River battlefield. There were only spiritual lands. The so-called spiritual lands were places where the heaven and earth spirit chi gathered. Looking at the entire Cloudy River battlefield, the average density of the heaven and earth spirit chi was only equivalent to the outer regions of the Spirit Stream battlefield. This kind of cultivation environment was not very helpful for Spirit Stream realm cultivators, let alone Cloud River realm cultivators. If one really cultivated in this kind of environment, the efficiency would undoubtedly be very low. Thus, spiritual lands were places that cultivators sought after. Spiritual lands were similar to the bases of the Spirit Stream battlefield. The heaven and earth spirit chi inside was much denser than in the outer regions. However, spiritual lands were not occupied by sections. Perhaps 3 to 5 friends would gather to occupy them, or perhaps 10 to 20 people. In general, the number of cultivators that could be accommodated in a spiritual land would not be too high. That was because the more people there were, the less heaven and earth spirit chi there could be. Spiritual lands were divided into 4 grades, A, B, C, and D. Grade A was the highest, and D grade was the lowest. The higher the grade of the spiritual lands, the denser the heaven and earth spirit chi. Cultivators who cultivated there would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Thus, in the Cloudy River battlefield, there would often be cases of cultivators gathering to attack and seize the spiritual lands of others. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, attacking and seizing the base of a sect was not an easy task. Once the defensive formation was activated, it was basically impregnable. That was because the power that a Spirit Stream realm cultivator could display was limited, and it would be difficult for them to break through the defenses of the formation. Unless they had methods like Lu Yi to break through the formation. But when cultivators reached the Cloud River tier, things were different. Their power would increase greatly, and their methods would also increase. In this way, even if they set up a defensive formation after seizing the spiritual lands, they would not necessarily be safe. In general, there were very few people who could occupy the various spiritual lands of the Cloudy River battlefield for long periods of time. Basically, it was a matter of people coming and going. Moreover, some spiritual lands did not exist for long periods of time. Perhaps today, the area was an A-grade spiritual land, but tomorrow, the spiritual chi would suddenly disappear, and it would lose the right to be a spiritual land. Or perhaps a certain area would suddenly gather heaven and earth spirit chi, and turn from an ordinary wilderness into a spiritual land. This was also a common occurrence. The Cloudy River battlefield was vast, and there were countless spiritual lands. However, there would always be some cultivators who did not have the power to seize the spiritual lands of others. How could they cultivate if they only relied on taking spiritual pills? The efficiency was too low. So, in the Cloudy River battlefield, aside from seizing spiritual lands and seizing a mountain to cultivate, there was another method, seizing the spiritual lots. In the entire Cloudy River battlefield, at any place, at any time, there could be spiritual lots descending from the sky. Spiritual lots were divided into 5 colors, white, green, blue, purple, and gold. White was the worst, and gold was the best. When the spiritual lots descended from the sky, basically everyone within 100 miles could see them clearly. The cultivators who seized the spiritual lots only needed to find a safe place and crush the spiritual lots. Then, a large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi would be produced for the cultivator to use for cultivation. Up until now, no one knew where these spiritual lots came from. They only speculated that they were bestowed by the heavens. Every day, a large number of spiritual lots would appear all over the cloudy river battlefield, and countless cultivators would benefit from it. However, seizing the spiritual lots was not easy. This was because every time the spiritual lots appeared, there would be many cultivators fighting for them. To seize the spiritual lots, not only did it depend on one's eyesight and speed, it also depended on one's power. If one was strong enough, one would naturally seize the golden spiritual lots. If one was not strong enough, one could only seize the white spiritual lots. So, in the cloudy river battlefield, there was no limit to one's cultivation speed. If one was really capable, one could break through the cloudy river battlefield in 1 or 2 years, and even reach the true lake stage. Chapter 444. Things like spirit sticks could be transferred, and this gave rise to a special transaction, spirit stick auction. Some cultivators who managed to snatch a spirit stick would choose to sell the spirit stick because they were embarrassed. Every once in a while, the Tianji Business Alliance would hold a spirit stick auction. Moreover, this kind of auction only used merit points as a bargaining chip, so even if one's luck was bad and he couldn't find a spirit land or get a spirit stick, as long as he had enough merit points, he could still cultivate very quickly. This was in line with some of the information Lu Yi had heard before. He had heard that merit points were very useful in the Cloud River battlefield, and now it seemed that this was indeed the case. In fact, merit points were very useful not only in the Cloud River battlefield, but anywhere and anytime. This was Lu Ye's first time in the Cloud River battlefield, so he didn't have to worry about the spirit land for now. Right now, the spirit land was basically owned by someone, unless he had the ability to snatch it from someone else. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, he was invincible, but in the Cloud River battlefield, that was not the case. After all, he had just advanced to the Cloud River tier, and even if his foundation was solid, the strength he could display was limited, and he couldn't be a match for those veteran Cloud River tier cultivators. He wanted to find some spirit sticks to take a look. Although he could take alchemical pills to cultivate even if there was no spirit chi of heaven and earth, if there was enough spirit chi of heaven and earth, the efficiency of his cultivation would be higher. He still had more than 70,000 merit points, so no matter what, he could buy some spirit sticks. He casually found a manager of the Business Alliance to ask about the auction, and learned that only 2 days had passed since the last auction, and he would have to wait close to a month for the next one. He immediately extinguished the thought in his heart. He had all the information he needed to organize, and Lu Yi walked out of the Tianji Business Alliance. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the figures of cultivators were constantly leaping about in the sky. The Cloud River battlefield. It was much livelier than the Spirit Stream battlefield. Of course, this was because the Tianji Business Alliance was here. In fact, because the Cloud River battlefield was too vast, the chances of encountering cultivators in the wilderness were lower than in the Spirit Stream battlefield. After all, overall, there were much fewer Cloud River tier cultivators than Spirit Stream tier cultivators. Standing outside the Tianji Business Alliance, Lu Yi transmitted a message to Giant Armor. Comparing the 10 totems. He told Giant Armor his current location. Giant Armor replied, "Ong." Lu Yi guessed that Giant Armor probably knew where he was, but Giant Armor didn't have the 10 totems, so he didn't know his location. Lu Yi also didn't know where to go. Since he had come, I'll just take things as they come. It's my first time here, so I should familiarize myself with the environment first. With this thought, Lu Yi soared into the sky. He randomly picked a direction and flew in the air. The 10 points on the map were shown. 300 miles away from here. There was a third-grade spiritual land. Lu Yi wanted to go there and see what level of heaven and earth spiritual qi there was. They were only here to observe. If you don't ask for shelter, others probably wouldn't refuse. As for which camp occupied the spiritual lands. Actually, many of the spiritual lands were occupied by Grand Heaven Alliance and myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. Neither of them would easily reveal which faction they belonged to, nor would they know each other's origins. You wouldn't see such a thing on the Spirit Stream battlefield, because the Spirit Stream battlefield was occupied by the sects as a whole. However, such a phenomenon was common in the Cloudy River battlefield. Because in the Cloud River battlefield, most of the cultivators acted alone. Even if they were in a group, they would also form small teams of 3 to 5 people. There would never be too many people gathered together to work. As such, if a new spirit land was discovered, the first cultivators to gather at the spirit land would sign the Heavenly Fate contract. Have some brief cooperation. The special environment created this kind of special way of doing things. That was why second senior sister Shui Yuan had told Lu Yi before that in the Cloudy River battlefield, the cultivators of the two camps weren't completely opposed to each other. They still needed some cooperation. With the Heavenly Fate contract, both sides could be at ease. There wouldn't be a situation where some people were playing tricks behind their backs. After flying for a short time, Lu Yi summoned his spirit boat. If he traveled a long distance, he would be able to use it. If they traveled long distances, it would consume less energy to fly. Now, his spirit boat was a middle-grade spirit tool. Its speed was faster than before, and it was stronger. Moreover, it was even sturdier because there were even more defensive restrictions within it, so it wouldn't be easily damaged like in the past. There was no one around. Yi quietly appeared and sat in front of Lu Yi. She looked around. She said with some curiosity, "This is the Cloud River battlefield. It doesn't seem to be any different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. People are different. In the future, we'll meet cultivators of the Cloud River tier. It's okay. If you want to fight, Hoopa and I will help you." Yi waved her small fist. Hoopa also let out a whimper, indicating that he was very good at fighting now. "Where are we going now?" Yi asked. "We're going to a third-grade spirit land to scout the situation." Oh. Yi didn't ask any more questions. She sat up straight and looked around. Suddenly, she raised her hand and pointed in a direction. She exclaimed, Lu Yi, that cloud is so beautiful. It has 4 colors." Lu Yi looked in the direction she was pointing. Sure enough, he saw a 4-colored cloud in the horizon. Moreover, that 4-colored cloud was moving quickly. Looking at its direction, it was actually floating towards him. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He hadn't thought that he would encounter such a good thing right after entering the Cloudy River battlefield. According to the information he'd bought from the Heavenly Fate Commerce Alliance, before the spirit lots descended from the sky, there would be colorful clouds. The spirit lots that could allow cultivators to cultivate were precisely those colorful clouds that would fly down. A 4-colored cloud could give birth to 4 kinds of spirit lots: white, green, blue, and purple. If it was a 5-colored cloud, it could give birth to the highest grade golden spirit lots. Correspondingly, if there were only 3 colors, then the spirit lots that would be born would only be white, green, and blue. If there were 2 colors, then it would be white and green. This kind of colorful cloud that appeared before the spirit lots descended from the sky was at least a 2-colored cloud, and the best was a 5-colored cloud. Now that there was a 4-colored cloud in front of him, this meant that it could give birth to a purple spirit lot at the highest. Lu Yi immediately stopped. After looking for a moment, he confirmed that the colorful cloud was floating towards him. He was instantly delighted. His luck was really not bad. However, a moment later, Lu Ye's expression became serious. This was because below the colorful cloud, streaks of light were shuttling back and forth. Everyone knew that when the colorful cloud appeared, there would be spirit lots descending from the sky. The cultivators in the vicinity naturally followed closely. Looking at those nimble and strong figures, there were clearly a considerable number of elites among them. When cultivators were in the spirit stream tier, because the level of their cultivation level was directly related to the number of small circulations in their body, they could deduce the cultivation level of others by looking at the spirit light on the surface of their bodies. But it was different when they reached the Cloud River tier. Cloud River tier cultivators only had one large circulations in their body, and it was difficult to deduce their true strength from the intensity of their spirit light. Moreover, the Cloud River tier was the realm where the difference in strength between cultivators was the greatest. Some people broke through to the Cloud River tier with 240 apertures, while others broke through to the Cloud River tier with 360 apertures. Because of the number of apertures opened during the breakthrough, the strength that could be displayed would naturally be different. Therefore, in the Cloud River tier, it was very unwise to judge one's strength based on the level of their cultivation. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were often situations where cultivators with lower cultivation levels killed cultivators with higher cultivation levels. Here, there were only two kinds of cultivators, those who could be defeated, and those who could not. As for whether one could defeat them or not, one would only know after a real fight. This was also the reason why Lu Yi dared to act alone when he had just arrived. He was indeed famous on the Spirit Stream battlefield, causing the various 10,000 Demon Ridge sects to want to kill him as soon as possible. However, that was only on the Spirit Stream battlefield. In the Cloud River battlefield, who would know who he was? Many cultivators who arrived at the Cloud River battlefield did not return to their sects for several years. For example, Lu Ye's third senior brother, Shao Xinghe, had stayed in the Cloud River battlefield until he broke through to the True Lake realm. This was a good thing for Lu Yi. Within the Spirit Stream battlefield, he was infamous for his infamy. He was known as the Sect Exterminating Leaf, one of the three disasters of the Spirit Stream battlefield, and all sorts of other things. Before Tianjiu had arrived, he had caused the entire Myriad Devil Ridge to curse him. Now that he had arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, he felt that he needed to keep a low profile. At the very least, he could not be like in the Spirit Stream battlefield, where people wanted to kill him wherever he went. In the entire Spirit Stream realm, he had spent almost all of his time being hunted down. It was really too miserable. Lu Yi did not become arrogant because of his achievements on the Spirit Stream battlefield. He was still very self-aware. With his current strength, there were many people on the Cloud River battlefield who were stronger than him. Therefore, when he saw a large group of flowing lights flying towards him, he hurriedly lowered his body and landed on a small hill below. There were at least a few hundred cultivators flying towards him, and as time passed, more and more cultivators continued to join them. After all, such a large cloud was floating in the sky. Within a radius of a few hundred miles, as long as one was not blind, they could see it clearly. They had not broken out into battle yet, because it was not time yet. Moreover, no one would casually reveal their faction. In the upcoming battle, unless there were people who were familiar with each other, everyone else would be opponents, regardless of whether they were from the opposing faction or their own faction. The cloud floated directly above Lu Ye's head, and then suddenly stopped. Lu Yi looked up, thinking that this was too much of a coincidence. Why did it stop above his head? The cloud was not too high from the ground, only about 3,000 feet. At this height, Cloud River tier cultivators could completely fly up, because according to common sense, the closer one was to the cloud, the more advantage they would have. However, in reality, no cultivator dared to get too close to the cloud. There had been people who had done so before, and now the grass on the grave was already more than 100 feet high. This was because when the spirit lot flew down from the cloud, its speed was extremely fast, and its destructive power was extremely great. If one was too close, no Cloud River tier cultivator would be able to withstand it. For things like spirit lots, the further they flew, the slower they would be, and the easier it would be to obtain them. Therefore, Not only did the cultivators who had followed the cloud not approach the cloud, but they were also scattered in various locations. Obtaining spirit lots was a matter of luck, because no one knew where the spirit lot would land. Chapter 445. In the wilderness, the four-colored cloud was 3,000 feet above the ground. Lu Yi was directly below the cloud, looking up. With Lu Yi as the center, hundreds of cultivators stood scattered in a radius of 10 miles, all of them rubbing their palms in anticipation. Some of the cultivators' attention was only on the cloud, and there were also cultivators silently observing the surroundings, as if to see if there were any strong competitors. There were also cultivators gathered together in twos and threes, whispering to each other. From the looks of it, they were probably thinking of forming a temporary alliance. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, several streaks of light suddenly shot out from the cloud above. There seemed to be something hidden in the streaks of light. Lu Yi immediately activated his eyesight, but even when he looked at the streaks of light at the first moment, he couldn't see clearly what the thing in the streaks of light looked like. The streaks of light that shot out from the cloud almost instantly reached a height of 300 meters above the ground. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. The intelligence was right. If he was too close to the cloud at this time, it would really be very dangerous. This kind of speed was not something that a Cloud River tier cultivator could avoid. Once the streaks of light hit him, it was very likely that he would be pierced through. When they reached a height of 300 meters above the ground, the streaks of light that shot out suddenly slowed down greatly. At the same time, the thing in the streaks of light revealed its true appearance. Each streak of light was wrapped in a spirit stick that was as long as a finger, 1 inch wide, and thick at the top and narrow at the bottom. Looking at its texture, it seemed to be carved from a piece of jade. Among them, 4 of the spirit sticks were white, and 1 was green. Immediately, there were cultivators that were closer to these spirit sticks, and flew out to meet those spirit sticks. There were only 5 spirit sticks in the first batch, but there were more than a dozen cultivators that flew out. Those who were lucky directly obtained a spirit stick, and no one fought over it. Those who were unlucky couldn't do it. Several people fought over a spirit stick, and there was a fight on the spot. Especially that green spirit stick, 5 or 6 pairs of eyes were staring at it, and the fight was the most intense. Lu Yi didn't move, mainly because the spirit sticks were a little far from his position. Even if he flew over, there wouldn't be enough time. However, looking at the fighting posture of those people, it was obvious that they were holding back. Now, none of the cultivators gathered here revealed their camp, so once a fight broke out, the opponents could be from the enemy camp, and could also be from the same camp. This was unavoidable. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi felt for the first time that his faction wasn't so obvious. This was different from the Spirit Stream battlefield, where cultivators from the same camp had almost never had any conflicts. Before the cultivators fighting for the spirit lots could be decided, more than a dozen streams of light flew out from the colorful clouds. This time, the number of green spirit lots floating down was obviously a few more. More and more cultivators rushed out and joined the fight. As time went by, batches of spirit lots fell from the clouds one after another. The area within a radius of 10 miles was bustling with noise and excitement as if salt had been sprinkled on hot oil. The cultivators kept a close eye on their targets. Whenever a spirit lot fell close to them, they would fly out to snatch it, causing chaos everywhere. Lu Yi innocently stood motionless on the small hill. It wasn't that he didn't want to snatch the spirit lots, but his luck didn't seem to be good. None of the spirit lots that fell from the clouds were close to him. The closest one was 3 miles away. Gradually, Lu Yi began to understand something. The position directly below the clouds didn't seem to have any spirit lots falling. It was like holding an umbrella on a rainy day. There were no raindrops under the umbrella, and the raindrops would fall from the edge of the umbrella. Just as Lu Yi was considering whether or not to change his position, another batch of spirit lots fell. This time, there were a lot of spirit lots, over 100 of them. One of them was heading straight for him. Lu Yi was moved. After waiting for so long, he could finally take action. The stream of light was only 300 meters away from him in an instant. At this moment, the color of the spirit stick in the stream of light was revealed. It was a blue spirit stick. There had been blue spirit lots before, but there weren't many of them. The better the spirit lot, the fewer the number. So far, he hadn't seen a purple spirit lot. Lu Yi rushed into the sky, crossing the distance of 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye, and grabbed the spirit lot in his hand. At the same time, a strong wind came from the side. Lu Yi caught a glimpse of a long spear stabbing straight at him from the corner of his eye. The mountain coiling saber was unsheathed, and a fiery red saber light flashed. With a clang, Lu Yi was forced back, his hand numb. Lu Yi hadn't had much contact with Cloud River Realm cultivators, so it was difficult for him to estimate the other party's cultivation, but from the situation of this exchange, the other party was obviously stronger than him. A conservative estimate was that the other party was a 4th or 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Difficult to deal with. What made Lu Yi even more uncomfortable was that just as he came to a stop, he saw several figures pouncing at him from all directions. A blue spirit lot was already very valuable. Naturally, it was worth these people fighting over it. Lu Yi weighed the pros and cons of using the spirit lot to escape and didn't wait for the others to come close. He directly threw the spirit lot in his hand at the spear-wielding cultivator who had attacked him just now. That person reacted quickly and caught the spirit lot in his hand, but before he could rejoice, the cultivators who had been rushing at Lu Yi attacked him. That person's expression changed drastically. He immediately shook his spear and fought with the attackers. A moment later, this person's face was bruised and his nose was swollen. He fell from the sky in a sorry state, screaming miserably. He had already thrown away the blue spirit lot that Lu Yi had thrown to him. He had no choice but to throw it away. If he continued to hold it in his hand, he would really die. When fighting for a spirit lot, unless there was a real grudge, most people wouldn't kill. After all, no one knew which camp the person fighting for the spirit lot belonged to. Of course, people could die. Cloud River Realm cultivators weren't very old, and their vitality was vigorous, so it was easy for them to lose control when fighting. Seeing this person's fate, Lu Yi secretly rejoiced that he had acted fast enough. If he had tried to escape with the spirit lot, he would have most likely ended up like that person. Unfortunately, giant armor wasn't here. If giant armor was here, it would be perfect. This large piece of skin was thick and tough, and was extremely resistant to beatings. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to do anything to him, and he could have given the spirit lot to giant armor just now. The fight for the spirit lot was still going on, and the four-colored cloud in the sky had shrunk by more than half. Lu Yi made a few more moves, but found that with his current strength, it was very difficult to fight for the spirit lot. Many people were eyeing the green and blue spirit lots. Even if he got them, he couldn't keep them. He could only settle for the next best thing, and fight for the white ones. But there were many people who had the same idea as him. Every time the spirit lot was bestowed, though the white spirit lots were the most in number, there were also many people fighting for them. Unless one was lucky enough, they could get it at the first moment. Returning without success again, Lu Yi raised his head to look at the four-colored cloud in the sky, and saw that the cloud had shrunk to only 30% of its original size. Just as he was looking, the cloud trembled, and then collapsed, suddenly turning into hundreds of rays of light, scattering in all directions. This was the last batch of spirit lots, and in this batch of spirit lots, there were a few purple spirit lots. There were also close to 20 blue ones. The cultivators were in an uproar, and those who were confident in their strength and speed all stared at the purple and blue spirit lots. Although Lu Ye's heart was itching, he still suppressed the impulse in his heart. Moreover, his luck was better this time. A green and a white spirit lot fell near him. His figure rushed out, and Lu Yi pounced straight for the green spirit lot. When he was about 100 feet away, and just as he was about to succeed, a ribbon suddenly attacked from the side. Spiritual light lingered on the ribbon. It was a spirit tool. The ribbon directly rolled up, and the two spirit lots were sucked in. Lu Yi was furious. Up until now, he hadn't even gotten a hair. Such a good opportunity was hard to come by, and there were two spirit lots. No matter what, he had to snatch one. When the mountain pan saber chopped down, blood chi gathered on the right arm holding the saber, and his entire arm swelled up. In a flash, the fiery saber chopped down, and the ribbon was cut in half. The expected scene of the saber cutting the ribbon didn't happen. After all, it was a mid-grade spirit tool, and it couldn't be damaged so easily. Moreover, this spirit tool's characteristic was to use softness to overcome hardness. However, the huge force still chopped the two spirit lots out of the ribbon. Lu Ye's eyes were sharp, and he quickly grabbed the green spirit lot in his hand. Just as he was about to grab the other one, a lily-white hand reached out and gently shook the back of Lu Ye's hand. In that instant, Lu Yi felt as if he had been bitten by a snake. The back of his hand hurt, and it was incomparably red. A beautiful figure brushed past him, and an alluring fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. Lu Yi paused and looked up, only to see a woman with an enchanting figure standing not far from him. The woman's arms were wrapped with a ribbon. It was the spirit tool that had just rolled up the spirit lots. The ribbon was very long, and it casually wrapped around one arm twice, around her slender waist, and then around her other arm. The woman's two forearms were exposed, and they were dazzling white. At this moment, the woman was holding a white spirit lot, and eagerly looked at the green one in Lu Ye's hand. She coquettishly said, "Little brother, let's exchange." Lu Yi hurriedly put the green spirit lot into his storage pouch. Stingy. The woman curled her lips, but her expression quickly changed. She hurriedly stood beside Lu Yi and assumed a fighting posture, as if she would beat up anyone who dared to come over. At the same time, she whispered to Lu Yi, "Cooperate." There were already a few people rushing towards them. Lu Yi nodded silently and stood side by side with the woman of unknown origin. The mountain pan saber in his hand ignited with flames. The cultivators rushing over couldn't help but frown when they saw this scene. If Lu Yi and the woman had gotten blue or purple spirit lots, they definitely wouldn't have let it go. Even if the two had assumed a cooperative posture, they might not have been able to keep the spirit lots in their hands. But if it was only green and white, it wasn't worth the effort. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.